hall swung open again. A plump bald man, garbed in rich silk and velvet pentoshi robes, walked in. His soft effeminate white hands smelled of lilac and lavender. Varys had no guards and no weapons, but the Master of Whispers knew things that no one should know. He frightened Sansa, but then, so did many people in the Red Keep. "Ah, my Lord Hand, we have been summoned by the king for a meeting of the small council," Varys announced. "Was this your doing?" the dwarf asked. "Pardon?" "The meeting was called by Joffrey," the eunuch replied. "This preacher in Cobbler's Square. Did your little birds give him the news of the battle? You are supposed to know everything that goes on in Westeros," Tyrion said. "I knew the battle was being fought near the Trident. But when armies clash, my little birds do not think of sending messages and ravens. They merely want to live for another day," Varys said. "Many men and women sworn to the faith have died in the Riverlands. More come every day to the capital with stories of the war. They do not like your father. No one likes my father. And you do not have spies in those men. I am surprised, Varys. You have eyes everywhere in this city," Tyrion said. "I am no sorcerer able to command wolves and ravens. But I have something I can share." When Varys reached into his robe, Bronn put a hand on his dagger. The eunuch withdrew a sliver of parchment. "The raven came late this morning from a holdfast on the King's Road." "And what does it say?" Tyrion asked. "The Lannister army fled past the keep last night. Thousands of men running south." Varys read aloud. "The Lion in full and complete retreat." The meeting at the Red Keep was insipid even by Tyrion's low expectations. Joffrey had raged and screamed. Cersei wavered between comforting her son and ranting at the incompetence of others. When Tyrion pointed out that incompetence was pure Lannister and the blame should be placed on their Lord Father, Cersei and Pycelle both shut up. "Your Grace, my little birds have told me a story in the Reach. The usurper Renly has passed away from his injuries," Varys said. Tyrion snorted. The death coincided with Baelish's visit. Littlefinger had been busy. "I wish my uncle had not died," Joffrey said, and then sneered. "Because if he were alive, I would take his head and mount it on the Red Keep. Your Grace, we need to concentrate on the living. We need more swords if the Northern Army marches to King's Landing. Lord Baelish has gone to the Reach. We will need to urge him to pursue the Tyrells further," Tyrion said. "For once, you make sense. Promise them anything. I want the Northmen defeated. I want Robb Stark's head served at a feast. I want Jon Snow drawn and quartered," Joffrey said. "There are other armies still out there. The Martells. I believe we should offer a betrothal with Myrcella to keep them as allies to the throne," Tyrion said. "You are not selling my daughter to the Dornish. They hated us for years. The Martells might kill her," Cersei yelled. "Will it get us swords?" Joffrey demanded. "It may prevent those swords from being sworn to other parties. If Stannis or Robb Stark ally with Dorne, we could be attacked from the south," Tyrion said. "Send Myrcella to Dorne," Joffrey said. Cersei looked at her son in shock. "But Sweeterling, she might not be safe." "I don't care, Mother. I don't care if Tommen or Myrcella die. They live to serve me. I am the king." "What about Storm's End?" Joffrey said. "Your Grace, the castle is in Stannis Baratheon's hands. Sir Gilbert Faring holds it as Castellan. Stannis's fleet has been preparing to depart. Will he attack King's Landing?" The look of fear on Joffrey's face would be comical if Tyrion was not worried about the same. "Stannis may, but he does not have the forces to take the city. We have several ways to defend the city, wildfire and a great steel," Tyrion said. "No one cares, uncle." Joffrey had stopped listening. Anger built again on his face. "What about these Stormlanders? Few have defected to Stannis. Most have returned to their keeps," Varys said. "Why are they not serving me? Why are they not fighting for me?" Joffrey demanded. "Because they do not think you are a Baratheon," Tyrion thought. "We are lucky that they see Stannis as a kinslayer. Sweeterling, they are pledged to Storm's End. With the control of the castle in question, the liege lords must consider their oaths. Cersei explained. An enraged Joffrey slammed his hand on the table. They should serve the king. When the war is over, I will have their heads for treason. I should have my own forces, and not depend on lords. I won't need Lannisters, Martells, or Tyrells. As Cersei tried to convince a petulant Joffrey that was not possible, Tyrion had a flash of happiness. He would have loved to see his nephew lead an army against Robb Stark and Jon Snow. Then Tyrion realized that when the battle ended, the Lannisters would all lose their heads. His head may not have been large or pretty, but he was quite attached to it. Arya Stark crept in the afternoon shadows to Jon's tent. She was happy to see Robb and her mother, but a day later, she was tired of being fussed over by Lady Catelyn, Lady Smallwood, and Lady Blackwood. She had been forced into a tub, and doused with scalding water. Servants had scrubbed her skin until she was bright red, and then dumped in some stinky flowers. Nymeria had taken one look at the tub, and then ran away to ghost. The white direwolf guarded Jon's tent, between the prisoners and the wounded. The pack of grey wolves stayed close, and ravens quarked at all hours. Jon had 36 boys, distributing supplies, guarding the catapults and ballista, feeding the wounded and changing dressings, and running errands. Some were only a name day older than she was, but they ordered prisoners to carry supplies, dig graves, and break down the wall to be sawed into long shafts. Arya had asked why prisoners, many not even in chains, would follow the orders of young boys. Horlis Mollin answered. They are afraid of the White Wolf. The stories of what he has done at the Tooth, beg pardon, but it is not for a lady's ears. When supper was served, she was washed, and combed and dressed. They had no gowns, so they gave her brown stockings, a tunic, and an oversized doublet. Her mother sewed a kirtle in Tully colors, mud red and blue. She sat at a high table, near her brother Robb. But when Robb was diverted, lords and ladies would gossip and tell tales. They talked about the battle at the Red River, and how Jon Snow silenced the ballistas until knights charged into a field of death. They whispered about wolves and ravens, and how Ghost's red eyes were like the bleeding face of a weirwood tree. They boasted that the North could not be defeated, the young wolf's leadership, the White Wolf's sorcery. They loved her brother Robb. They feared her brother Jon. Jon was not at dinner. There were hundreds of badly injured soldiers, and he spent many hours tending to the wounded. He also worked often with the artillery. The highborn and smallborn alike marveled at the killing power of the machines. Robb was busy as well, speaking to lords, listening to complaints, and sparring with his trusted battle guard. Robb could often be found in his battle tent, Grey Wind at his feet, writing ravens to castles in the Riverlands and the North. She was seen just as their little sister, Arya underfoot. The men paid their courtesies, and Winterfell and Tully guards kept a constant eye on her. Her mother insisted she sleep in the same tent, but Nymeria wanted to stay out in the open, near Ghost. She hugged the direwolf before bed, but it wasn't the same. She was pampered, coddled and loved. But that wasn't her. She would never be a proper lady. She snuck away from Horlis Mollin and Ullabelly. Through the tent flap, Ghost sniffed her first and then Nymeria. The ravens glanced at her with beady eyes before turning away. A tall blond boy, perhaps 10 and 4, was leaving the tent, carrying a scroll. Arya walked in and hugged Nymeria. I missed you. The direwolf rubbed her grey fur against her cheek, and Jon smiled. She is going to get your dress dirty. Jon said. Good. Arya said, looking at the bundles of paper in front of her brother. What are you doing? Preparing. Once we take back the fortifications on the Red Fork, there is no reason to stay. The prisoners should be moved to castles or ransomed. I may keep a few boys here to tend the injured, but the army should camp elsewhere. And the seriously wounded should be moved to Harroway or Stonehenge. We will go south and east. Jon said. Are you going to leave me? Arya demanded. Jon arched his eyebrows. Arya, Robb and I just found you. And Nymeria too. Arya bit her lip. I overheard stories from the servants. That you are a warg and a sorcerer. They whisper dark things about you. Jon offered her a chair. Arya, I am a warg. I can see from the eyes of a wolf or a raven. We could not have crossed the Golden Tooth otherwise. And at the Red Fork, if I didn't walk into the wolves and the ravens, the Lannisters would have won. What was that like? They say you summoned a cloud of ravens so vast, the sky darkened. Arya asked with wonder. Strange and frightening. I could see from 1,000 eyes, the ravens and wolves. I felt powerful but mad, like I would lose my mind. Magic is a double-edged sword. There is no safety when you grasp it. Jon said. Asoma Arya looked down. I think I am a warg too. I have wolf dreams. I saw Nymeria attacking 4 men who were tracking me. She killed them with her pack. I am not ashamed to be a warg. It is a part of me. And it is a part of you. It does not change who you are. To be bonded with a dire wolf is a wonderful thing, a gift from the gods. Nymeria saved me at the Red Fork. And Ghost has helped me many times. He deserves to be honored more than me. Jon said. The white wolf cocked his head and rubbed Jon's leg. Arya held Nymeria, her skinny arms around the she-wolf's strong neck. She looked up to her brother. I want to stay with you and Robb, with Ghost, Grey Wind and Nymeria. I don't want to be locked up in a castle, or paraded around as a lady. I want to help you fight. Arya, war is dangerous. Jon said. So is peace. They killed Sansa's dire wolf. And for what? Because Joffrey attacked my friend Micah and tried to hurt me. Arya said. Joffrey truly is a shit. Jon said. I could stay with you, Jon. I could be your squire. Arya said eagerly. Jon laughed. I am not a knight, Arya. Robb isn't a knight, either, and he has a squire, she said. I would be a great squire. It is much better than being married off like a prize. Jon smiled. You know, the Freys wanted a betrothal to cross their bridge. They asked for Robb's hand and yours in marriage. Arya turned white, and then got angry. Which Frey was it? Elmar, I think. The squire who picks his nose. Jon burst out laughing at her sour reaction. How can you laugh? Arya fumed. Arya, if we do not laugh, we could only cry. I will not let anyone undeserving marry you. And besides, if you married Elmar Frey, Nymeria would probably eat him. Jon said. They were still laughing when Chet came into the tent. Maester Snow, Lord Stark has called for you for a war council. Thank you, Chet. My sister and I will attend. Jon ignored the strange looks when they walked into the tent. The mood was grave, and the Northern Lords had lost all sense of joy. The Great Jon paced back and forth, like a giant ready to roar. It had been only 2 days after their victory at the Red Fork. Sweeterling, what are you doing here? Lady Stark asked of her daughter. Jon said I should attend. Arya responded. But you are too young, Lady Arya. These are matters of war. Robert Glover said. Arya is a Stark. And the Starks have always served their house in wars. Jon said. She has only 11 name days. Catelyn said with anger. It will be my 12th name day soon. Arya said stubbornly. Jon raised his hand. My lords, you have accepted that I am Robb's heir. The Northern Lords nodded, some reluctantly. Arya is my heir. If I fall, I return my title to House Stark. Robb had a faint smile on his face. Well played, Jon. Bran should be the heir after Robb. Catelyn grumbled. In a time of peace, he would be. This is war. Arya is a year older, and Jon chose her. You are welcome to join us, sister. Robb offered the seats next to him. Several ravens arrived today with dark news. Iron-born ships have been seen in the north. 30 longships were sighted at Deepwood Motte. 8 more at the Stony Shore. But the worst news comes from Flint's Finger. They have seen 100 ships in Blazewater Bay. Lord Stark, that must be the Iron Fleet, captained by Victorian Greyjoy. He is a powerful warrior but only follows Balon's orders. Stupid and stubborn as an ox, that one. Lord Mallister said. Robb, we must send more men to defend Winterfell. Catelyn said. Men from White Harbor arrived at Winterfell a week ago. And with the levies, Sir Roderick will command 2,000. But Victorian will have 5 to 10,000 men. Rob said. How do we know he will attack Winterfell? His ships are hundreds of miles away. Arya said. Arya is right. Victorian would have to abandon his ships and trek a long distance overland. Although, they could sail up the rivers to get closer. Jon said. Men from Torrens Square reports that they have seen Theon Greyjoy at the stony shore. They ask whether they should venture west to attack him. Rob said. That's very odd. Jon said, thinking deeply. The Northmen waited for him to continue. Theon has lived in Winterfell for a decade. If the Greyjoys wanted to attack Winterfell, Theon would be with the main fleet. Even if Victorian was commander, he would want Theon's knowledge. But if the Iron Fleet is not attacking Winterfell, why are they there? Arya said. Jon and Rob both studied the map. Blazewater Bay was a large but narrow bay of the Sunset Sea. Ships from Torrens Square and Barrowtown could travel south into the Salt Spear. But the Salt Spear also extended even further east, hundreds of miles. There, it hit the Fever River, part of the neck that separated the north from the Seven Kingdoms. And at the end of the Fever River, only 20 miles inland, the ancient stronghold of the First Men stood, Moat Cailin. Of course. Jon said. Both brothers had realized at the same time. The Iron Fleet is doing what I suggested to Sir Stevron. They wish to sail their ships east on the Salt Spear, and the Fever River. They want to take Moat Cailin from the west. Jon said. But, if they do so, Lord Snow, we will be trapped south of the neck. Harry On said. Moat Cailin commanded the only road through the neck. Any army moving north would lose a huge number to bogs, quicksand, and swamps. Rampant disease would break out among the soldiers. We will need to send a raven to Moat Cailin. Jon has sent 500 more archers and spearmen. So they will have 600 men. But it will be harder to hold off an army from the west or north than the south. Rob said. There is a weakness to the Greyjoy plan. The eyes in the room turned to Jon. The Fever River narrows a great deal. At some points, only 1 or 2 ships can pass. The Iron Fleet will be vulnerable. But the Iron Fleet has thousands of men. Lord Karstark said. We would not attack the men. We attack the ships. If we could sink 1 ship, we could block the river. North of the river, there are barrows, hills that Northmen could use to hide and attack. South of the river, there are swamps. It is called the Fever River for a reason. If Victorian Greyjoy gets stuck on the Fever River, his men will die of sickness and starvation. Jon said. Rob nodded. Go find me the leader of the Dustins. The Great Jon brought Saruga Dustin into the room. He was a second cousin of the late Lord, and also related to the Ryswells. He led the small cohort of men from Barrowtown. Saruga, are you loyal to the North? Will Barrowtown keep their faith with the Starks? The knight might have taken offense, but the many hard and angry faces in the tent stopped him. My lord, I do not understand. It is true Lady Barbary has grievances, but House Dustin has fought for the Starks in the last 3 wars. Ruga said. The Greyjoys mean to attack Moat Cailin from the west on the Fever River. I want Barrowtown to call levies and harass the squids as they go through the swamp. No direct engagements or assaults, but hit and run only, particularly to damage the ships. I want their forces slowed down. You will write to Lady Barbary. If she should delay or pretend not to receive my raven, when the war ends, I will send Jon Snow to sack Barrowtown, tear down Barrow Hall and end the Dustin line. Rob said. And I will help him. Great Jon Umber said. Any Northman who allows squids to attack should be buried in the neck or drowned at sea. The North will remember if you are traitors. The Umbers are with you, Lord Stark. The Flints, Marndaelis and Karstarks also agreed. My lord, I will write the raven. I am certain Lady Barbary will heed the call. I will speak to the Ryswell men as well, a red-faced Ruga said, and quickly left. Tall Heart's men at the Twins must go north to the moat. And I will send Crannog men to find Lord Reed, and tell him to attack from the south. They can raft up the Green Fork. Rob said. White Harbor can send men too, Lord Stark. But it will take weeks. There is no road that connects White Harbor to the King's Road. Willis said. What of Deepwood Motte, my lord? The castle is well provisioned and has hundreds of Glover men, but the villagers will suffer. Robert Glover said. There is little we can do. The Mormonts have sent most of their forces south. Lady Glover will have to withstand the siege. Rob said. And Mandaily men must stay at Winterfell. I want my brothers safe. I promise you that the Ironborn will pay dearly for the attack. Rob, we should send a messenger to King's Landing. We can get Sansa back and end the war. Then we can return north, and repel the Greyjoys. Catelyn said. Joffrey the Ill-Born still sits on the throne. But I would prefer not to fight on two fronts. We will treat with the Lannisters, but only from strength. We will clear the rest of the Riverlands. Eddard, Dacey, and the Smallgen have already started. In a few weeks, I want any bandits and Lannisters gone. We will need to take Harrenhal, and control the King's Road. We will send more men to clear Deari, and Maidenpool, and south. Rob said. Our forces will be stretched thin. And rivermen may be slow to return, when they see their burnt down farms and destroyed villages. The Blackfish warned. We are stretched too thin, already. That cannot be helped. Maidenport and Deari should be free. And Harrenhal must be taken. If Tywin Lannister returns north, then we need that castle as a base for supplies. Rob said. Rob dismissed the lords and his lady mother. He kept back only his siblings, Jon and Arya and their direwolves. So you are now Jon's heir. When did this happen? Rob asked. I never asked for it. Arya protested. It was a surprise to me. Now you know how I felt when Rob declared me his heir. Jon said. True enough. Jon was rather annoyed at being proclaimed heir to the north. He still wants to return to the citadel. Rob said. He poured goblets of water for his brother and sister. What do you think about Moat Cailin? It will be a close thing. It depends a great deal on whether the Ironborn can be taken by surprise. And on whether Lord Reed and Lady Dustin send enough men. Jon said. But even if you lose Moat Cailin, hope is not lost. You could sail men from Maidenpool to White Harbour. It would take a month, but you can take Moat Cailin from the north. If I had 3,000 men, I could destroy the Greyjoys on the Fever River. I cannot spare you to go north, brother. The Iron Throne is the true threat. And we do not have enough men. Rob said. I am sending Sir Robar Royce to the Vale. Sir Robar is a good man. But a knight can serve who he wishes. A lord cannot. Jon said. What are the two of you talking about? Arya asked. Robar is Jon Royce's second son. Rob wants men from the Vale. But your aunt has refused. They may be old friends of father, but I am not certain Lord Royce or Redfort will disobey Lady Arryn. We have lost 2,000 in battle. We had to send another 1,500 north. 1,000 more guard the tooth. And Lord Bolton means to betray us. Jon said. The Boltons. But, how and what will you do? Arya said. Roose Bolton will pay. His bastard betrayed us at the Red Fork. Jon said. We have many enemies. Jon has removed the lands to the west from the war, but we still have Ironborn to the north, King's Landing and the Lannisters, Bolton's treachery, and who knows what Stannis Baratheon will do. Rob said. Arya, are you certain you want to stay on the battlefield? We could send you somewhere safe. You are not going to marry me off. Arya cried. Rob shot a dirty look at Jon, who shrugged and smiled. Rob sighed and looked at his angry sister. I swear, little sister, that I will not marry you off without your consent. One awful betrothal in this family is enough. He said. I am going to be Jon's squire. Arya said, and Nymeria perked up her ears. Rob groaned. You explain this to Lady Stark, he said to Jon, who rolled his eyes. Ghost and Grey Wind shook their heads, but Nymeria only snickered while Arya beamed. Jon could not complain about the turn of events. He would make certain that his sister stayed safe. Now, they only needed Sansa, and the Starks could return to Winterfell and the rest of the pack. Petyr Baelish smiled as he walked through the hall, fingering the small crystal that had hung on the false septon's neck. Lothar Brune had washed the blood off after disposing of the mummers. Negotiations were going well. He had promised 2 positions on the King's Guard to the Reach, the meaningless Master of Law's spot on the small council, the return of Hobber and Horace Tyrell, and a tax holiday of 2 years for Highgarden. He had been forced to give Sansa Stark up to the Queen of Thorns, but that promise could be broken. Joffrey Baratheon hated losing his toys. The Tyrells still wanted more, but that would come at the cost of Lannister power. The only question was when those 2 houses would go to war. As Baelish entered the room, the blade of a longsword sliced down, stopping an inch from his neck. Half the 7 kingdoms might think Loras Tyrell exceptionally handsome, but Littlefinger weighed the value of good looks only in whores, not in men who might kill him. "Do you mean to cozen us?" Loras shouted. A pompous mace nodded behind him. "My lords, what is the meaning of this? I have come in good faith. If I have offended you, tell me why." Baelish said with feigned outrage. "Loras, bring him to me," the Queen of Thrones commanded, surrounded by her grandchildren. "We received news from the Riverlands this morning. Did you know? I left King's Landing before any battle. How could I have received any news?" Baelish said. "I am in the dark, my lords. Tywin Lannister lost at the Red Fork. He fled south like a dog. They say the best knights of the Westerlands died at the river, slain by traps and spells by the bloody wolf." Willers said. "The slaughter was so great that ravens and wolves swarmed the field, devouring men alive. The Lannisters had the larger army and yet the wolves beat them bloody. Would you have us join the losing side?" Garland said. Baelish smiled. "But that is wonderful news, my lords. And even better for the Reach and Highgarden. You will be a great queen, your grace." Littlefinger bowed to Margaery Tyrell. "What trickery is this?" a confused Mace asked. "With Tywin Lannister defeated, the Iron Throne will need your swords even more. You will have greater influence." Mace Tyrell, the Hand of the King. Willers Tyrell, Master of Laws. "Perhaps you would be the Master of Ships, Sir Garland." And Lady Margaery, good Queen Alysanne had her own sworn shield. "You might ask for an entire Queen's Guard," Baelish said. "I don't like the sea, Baelish. And the wolves are still on the field," Garland said. A shocked Mace Tyrell had found his voice. "Hand of the King. Do you really think Tywin will let me be Hand? I would be the first Tyrell, even greater than Leo Longthorn. He may have been the greatest knight in the 7 kingdoms, but he was not Hand." "Of course, my lord. You would be the first of your name to be Hand. And as Hand, you would have 2 Reachmen on the council and my vote as Master of Coin. Joffrey may be Baratheon and Lannister, but behind the throne, it would be all Tyrells," Baelish said. Before Mace could puff up further, Olenna Tyrell's voice rang out. "Lord Baelish, I would have a word alone." Petter retired with the Queen of Thorns to the Solar. Her 2 giant guards loomed over him, and the door was guarded by Highgarden men led by Sir Garland. Olenna took out a small glass vial, that held a thick purple liquid smelling of ash and lime. A slender dagger rested on the table. "Do you know what that is?" She pointed at the glass. "I confess that I am no maester," Baelish said. "It is the Strangler. You used this to kill Renly. Archmaester Ambrose told me in private. The Strangler is usually dissolved in wine, but he assures me that a dagger would also work." "Lady Olenna, I was nowhere near the castle," Baelish protested. The Queen of Thorns motioned her 2 guards forward. "All right. Yes, I did use the Strangler. But Renly was of no use to anyone. With him alive but unconscious, nothing would change. The Tyrells would be stuck in the Reach, the wolves and lions would be fighting in the Riverlands. I have helped you greatly. Don't pretend that you care about helping the Tyrells. I could tell Loras that you killed Renly. He would be happy to chop off your head." Olenna said. "Why haven't you then?" Baelish asked. "There are things to be bargained for. And I am curious, why did you do this? Why murder Renly? What is your interest in the matter?" Olenna asked. "The Lannisters will reward me. They may grant me a great castle," Baelish said. "Please. You have never cared about lands or knights. Your trade is gold, whores and secrets. Why do you want the Tyrells to ally with the Lannisters? Even if Stannis gained the Iron Throne, he could not ban your brothels. Olenna said. I will tell you, but only in private. Baelish looked at the two giant guards. Olenna nodded and Erike stepped back. I have long hated House Stark. When I was a boy, I was fostered at Riverrun and grew up with Catelyn Tully. She loved me and I loved her, but her father promised her to Brandon Stark. I challenged him for her hand and the Oath of Winterfell nearly killed me. I have heard a different story. Brandon Stark offered you multiple chances to yield. Lady Catelyn begged for your life. Everyone knew that you had no chance against Brandon. Even in the Reach, we heard that he was a gifted swordsman. Olenna said. And yet he is dead and I am alive. And Ned Stark is dead. I want all the Starks and the Tullys beaten, except for my lost love. Baelish said. Catelyn Tully was married 17 years ago and yet you still thirst for revenge against her sons and daughters. The question hung in the air, unanswered. Very well, but I want something as well. Otherwise House Tyrell refuses the alliance. Olenna said. I will grant you everything in my power. I swear it. Baelish said. Olenna held up her hand and Erike left the room. She pointed to the Strangler. I want Joffrey Baratheon dead. Tommen will be a better king for my granddaughter and the Tyrells. Of course, my lady. He nodded pensively to Olenna Tyrell. Deep down, Baelish beamed. 10 years ago, he had started his rise as the customs agent for Jon Arryn at Gulltown. Now, the final seeds had been sown. It was the slow knife, the knife that takes its time, the knife that waits years without forgetting, then slips quietly between the bones. That's the knife that cuts deepest. House Stark would be destroyed. Owen Fossoway slipped into the room, full of great lords and powerful landed knights. He hid behind the stout Mathis Rowan and saw the Tyrells enter. Petter Baelish was not with them, and the room was sealed shut, with rows of guards outside. No servants were allowed, only the greatest of the highborn in the Reach. Mace Tyrell beamed at the assembled lords. My daughter will become Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Lady Margaery is betrothed to King Joffrey, and the Iron Throne has promised many rewards to the Reach for our loyalty. But the Lannisters are losing. An unknown voice shouted in the room. Mathis Rowan spoke. We have all heard about Lord Tywin's defeat. They say even now, a sennight later, the trident is full of bodies and bleeds red from the blood of dead men. Owen wondered if Lord Rowan knew that the Red Fork had always been red from mud. Our forces outnumber the Northmen, and we are better armed. Mace said dismissively. That was true for Tywin Lannister's men and they were slaughtered. Jon Fossoway said. Randall Tarly snorted. No kingdom is stronger than the Reach. We have more knights, soldiers and cavalry than any. The wolves will bend the knee when they see our might. Sir Baelor stood up. The handsome knight was respected throughout the Reach. I would not be so certain. The Hightower has not been involved with the Iron Throne since the dance. In that war, House Hightower supported the Greens and Aegon II. Cregan Stark sent the Winter Wolves south under Roderick Dustin to fight for the Blacks. In their first battle, the Wolves charged Lannister spearmen and forced them into the God's Eye where many drowned. In the second battle, they slaughtered Sir Criston Cole, the Hand of the King. And in their final battle, the Northmen charged 10 times their number and killed Lord Hightower. But the Winter Wolves never returned north. They were all slain in the Riverlands. Tarly said. Not before they killed many men. Roderick Dustin was covered in blood from head to heel, and his shield arm was chopped off when he slew Lord Ormond Hightower with his sword. I doubt these Northmen will be affrighted by any host. Baelor said. Sir Baelor, we appreciate your thoughts but we are aware of something that you are not. Lady Olenna said. Sir Gullen stepped forth. We have reports that Victorian Greyjoy has left Pike with the Iron Fleet. He goes north to raid. So House Stark is under attack from the Squids? Mathis Rowan asked. Mace Tyrell rubbed fat meaty hands in glee. Aye. To save his lands, Robb Stark will have to return home. It's plain. The boy must gather his forces, abandon the Riverlands, and throw his might north to repel the Greyjoys. That is what I would do. There was a collective sigh as the lords realized that the Reach would win the Iron Throne without much bloodshed. Only the pugnacious Randil Tali had been eager for battle. The men of the Reach preferred jousts and tournaments over fighting savages and wolves. And the less said about sorcery, weirwood trees, and wargs, the better. The lords congratulated the new queen and pledged their fealty. After all, with 50,000 fresh soldiers, a Lannister alliance, and the military mind of Randil Tali, what could possibly go wrong? Owen Fossoe left the room quickly. He needed to send a raven to Jon Snow. Author's notes. The son is the shadow of the father. That actually comes from a Theon Greyjoy quote in one of the Reek chapters. Dance of Dragons, Theon is not meeting Ramsay, so I borrowed it. The casualty rates of battles in the modern age are interesting and makes you wonder about death rates in ancient warfare. At Gettysburg, the South suffered 28,000 casualties but only 4,000 deaths. 19,000 are injured and 5,000 captured or missing. In contrast, in ancient battles, everybody dies. Is that because of the poor medical care, or that after the battle, the victors would slaughter the losers? Why didn't they sell prisoners into slavery, like ancient Rome? Do the other Lannister men bear guilt for the atrocities in the Riverlands? Probably, but a few express distaste for the actions. Lyle Crocker Hall has a rough sense of chivalry, just as Robb Stark was disgusted with Lord Karstark killing squires after Jaime was freed. Even though Petyr Baelish is the Mockingbird, his great-grandfather is a Bravo sea sellsword. The Baelish sigil is actually the Titan of Bravos, although Littlefinger wears the Mockingbird. There is no connection to the Faceless Men, only that Baelish knows his poisons. The Tyburn Triple Tree is a triangle gallows in London that was the most popular site for hangings. As many as 24 people could be hung at the same time. The gallows operated from 1571 to 1759, and people paid money for better seats. It is estimated that in 1724, 200,000 people, 1/3 of the population of London, turned up to see a highwayman hung. The unnamed Mountains men are Chiswick and the Tickler. The third is Poliver, who stole Needle. Arya Stark snaps at the inn at the crossroads when Sandor Clegane fights the Mountains men. In the book, Arya stabs the Tickler at least 4 times, and probably a lot more. In the show, Arya kills a man with a backstab and then runs Poliver through the neck with Needle. These are good scenes, but they come after the Red Wedding and more trauma for Arya. Here, the Mountains men are put down like dogs and Arya doesn't go nuts. Make me a water dancer and a wolf and not afraid, ever again. This is Arya's prayer to the old gods, in A Clash of Kings. She is trapped in Harrenhal at that time. Jon brings a lot of food to the inn. A plough horse can pull 8,000 pounds. The wagon is pulled by a team of such horses. I am not even sure what a round of bread is. I think it is an English term for 2 slices of a sandwich. Stannis has a personality of a lobster. I am not sure if this is in the books, but Laura says it to Renly in the TV show. The cow is already milked and the cream cannot be squirted back. I think this is also a TV-only quote. The Queen of Thorns has great lines. In the show and the books, there is a great scene where Olenna orders the cheese plate and the Tyrells interrogate Sansa about Joffrey. In the books, Baelish proposes the betrothal but her servants spread tales of Joffrey's cruelty. I find that unrealistic. It is one thing for Ned Stark to not know about Joffrey's vicious nature. Ned Stark is politically clueless, the North is 1,500 miles away and Joffrey is a year younger. The Reach though is much closer. Tumbleton, the northmost town on the Rose Road, is 170 miles from King's Landing. And Joffrey has chopped off Ned Stark's head, has a whole bunch of toadies, and beats Sansa publicly. How could Olenna Tyrell be oblivious to what Joffrey is? Joffrey is a sadistic bastard, but he actually makes a few good points. He is prone to bouts of anger, but he has a certain low cunning. In the show, he argues the throne should have its own royal forces. This actually is important historically. If you relied on levies from your nobles, they could only feed a few thousand men, and they had enormous influence. In some places like Scotland, powerful families controlled kings. But if the king had a monopoly on armed force, the game changes, and the armies could get much larger and more professional. Some readers will wonder why I don't focus on Theon's attempts to capture Winterfell. I think that plotline is unrealistic. Theon captures it with 40 men. Winterfell is several acres with walls of 100 feet tall. Bran actually has a dream of Winterfell being drowned, but Hojan Reed convinces him that his dream wouldn't change anything. Shades of Season 8. It always felt forced to me. In any case, the action and focus here is on Moat Cailin. Marndaily men are at Winterfell, it is not falling to Theon and 40 men. The numbers on the Iron Fleet are sketchy at best. GRM said once that every lord of the Iron Islands could launch 100 ships. At 50 men a ship, that is 5,000 raiders. Even at 30 men a ship, that is 3,000. In contrast, Roose Bolton has less than 3,000 men, and the Bolton lands are larger than the Iron Islands, which are described as bare rock. Now, maybe the argument is every Ironborn is a fighter and trained warriors are only a fraction of the feudal world. But it doesn't pass the smell test. The advantage of Vikings was never their numbers, it was the speed and the surprise factor of the longboats. Victorian is attacking the neck. He is losing all of that, and can easily be harassed. The love of Baelish for Catelyn Stark has always struck me as psychotic. Well written though. We never get his POV, because GRM says like Varys, he knows too much, but I read him as harboring a serious grudge against House Tully and Stark. Claiming you love Catelyn yet wanting all of her children destroyed is a strange thing. And Littlefinger's perving over Sansa is creepy and strangely ineffectual. I think in the books, GRM will use that to explain why Baelish is so blind to the fact that his plotting in Winterfell is horrifically obvious. Bran literally can see everything as the three-eyed raven. It was the slow knife, the knife that takes its time, the knife that waits years without forgetting, then slips quietly between the bones. That's the knife that cuts deepest. This is the chapter title and lifted from Talia's soliloquy after she stabs Batman in The Dark Knight Rises. She is a great character and they could have done a lot more with her. Mace Tyrell's words are very close to what he tells Joffrey's small council. This is after Theon claims to kill Rickon and Bran. I believe he is the master of ships at this time. Of course, House Tyrell will learn that the Starks do not bend the knee easily. And Baelish wants chaos. Readers can argue that the Tyrells should have just gone for the throne. March to King's Landing and take the city. The Lannisters are weak, the Starks don't care, and Stannis has no allies and somewhere between 6,000 to 8,000 men. Without factoring in politics, that would make sense. But legitimacy is a big deal in Westeros and the Tyrells have no claim at all. Chapter 23, The Scouring. Chapter text. The Scouring. Arya Stark had grown up in the shadow of her sister, Sansa, a misfit and a lone wolf. She detested three things. She did not like being the center of attention, and many eyes stared at her that afternoon. She did not like being fussed over, and Lady Smallwood, Lady Blackwood, and Lady Went cooed over her like a little bird. And she truly hated trying on clothes. "Stay still, Arya," Jon said for the third time. "Do I really need this?" she said. "Yes," her brothers replied, as three curious direwolves looked on. The Wintertown boys handed the thin metal discs to Jon and he attached them to the plates already sewn into the red and gold silk doublet. In a looted wagon, Chet discovered the doublet along with a crimson silk blanket decorated with the Lion of the Lannisters. Jon had ripped up the blanket for thread and an inner layer. "There. How does that feel?" Jon stepped back. Needle rested on a table next to her lady mother. Arya slipped into the first few movements of the water dance, her body side-face, legs bent, balanced on the tips of her toes, lunging first with the left and then the right. She stutter-stepped, extending her left hand forward from the diagonal position in a thrust, and glided with speed and grace. Catelyn groaned at the sight of Arya dancing lightly, like a water droplet across the surface of the trident. "I can barely feel the armor. It is so light," Arya said. She had once worn her father's brigandine, boiled leather riveted with iron plates. That was 2 name days ago, but she could barely move. And she knew that a chainmail hauberk could weigh north of 20 pounds, and plate armor was even more cumbersome. The steel discs and plates made no sound as she danced. "But it is strong enough to protect her." Robb pointed to the doublet over her arms and torso. "Yes. With the blast furnace, I experimented with different alloys. This one is lighter and cannot hold an edge, but it has high impact strength and force resistance. A crossbow at 50 feet could not penetrate the armor. The brigandine is strong enough to block an arrow, a dagger thrust or a sword, and the weight is well distributed. The doublet only weighs 7 pounds. Why does she get the best gifts? Rob complained. Arya smiled at the jest. That brigandine is difficult to make. We don't have much of that metal, and even less silk. The silk is strong and light. The discs have to be beaten thin, and fitted to the wearer. Jon said. The only problem, Arya, is that you look like a Lannister in crimson and gold. You need more grey and black. Rob said. I think Nymeria's presence is enough. Jon said. The dark grey she-wolf nodded haughtily. You look lovely, child. I just wish you did not need armor. Lady Smallwood said. I need it for battle. Can I go to the sparring yard? After Jon nodded, she picked up needle and dashed out of the tent. Nymeria followed her, and the ladies departed with Catelyn Stark in the other direction. Arya was too far to hear her brothers speak about battle plans. That night, Arya sat inside her brother Jon's tent. She had spent most of the day sparring with Brian, dancing around the tall woman. Needle could not penetrate the heavy blue steel plate, so even exhausted, the Maid of Tarth won. A large raven entered and lit on Jon's shoulder. Her brother spoke to Chet, who rushed out. Arya, prepare the horses. We have to go. Jon said. She joined dozens of squires outside. Little Ben Blackwood helped Cale Vance don armor. Oliver Free brought out horses for Rob and many in his battle guard. The Blackfish was already mounted and urged Ed Muirtully to hurry. Rob held up his hand to the dozen Riverlords and even more Northmen. Silence on the ride. She galloped at Jon's side and the 3 direwolves racing in the dark with Grey Wind at the lead. They took the river road west, 50 men strong and heavily armed. Torches blazed at the inn at the crossroads, and smoke puffed from the white stone chimney. Arya reached hesitantly for Nymeria, and she could smell from a mile away the scent of unwashed men and tired horses. They surrounded the building on all sides, ignoring the laughter inside. Northmen and Rivermen guarded every window and exit, weapons ready, when the Great Jon pushed the door open. There were children at the inn at the crossroads, but also a dozen men, a motley mixture, some brawny soldiers, a few lean archers, and some so young they could be squires. An older man, with a thin fox-like face, stopped singing "Let Me Drink Your Beauty" on his wood-up. The eyes of the band went to a hooded man speaking with Gendry. He turned and Arya could see his ghastly face. One of his eyes was gone, the flesh about the socket scarred and puckered, and the other side of the face had been bashed in. He wore a ragged black cloak speckled with stars and a dented iron breastplate bearing a forked purple lightning bolt. A skinny red-headed man reached for his bow. Touch any weapon and you will lose both of your hands. Surrender your arms. Jon said. The one-eyed man stood up and handed over a shield slashed by lightning and a dark longsword. He might have been dashing once, but now he looked like a scarecrow, soaked after a flood. The young wolf and the white wolf. My men have done nothing wrong, he said. I will be the judge of that, Beric Dondarrion. Rob said. Arya stood guard with Oliver Free and a few other squires. She doubted that was necessary. 10 prisoners, even Harwin, who had once served as a Stark guard, were bound tightly in ropes. Nymeria, alone, could have killed them all. Only Beric Dondarrion and a thin man in red robes with a top knot of grey hair and a droopy face remained at liberty. How did you find us, Arya? Hot Pie asked. This bunch only came at sunset. Jon knew. Arya said. Hot Pie gawked at her brother, his mouth agape. Don't stare. You might attract his attention. Gendry said. Hot Pie gulped and scurried back to the kitchen. The other squires also turned their eyes away in fear. Arya walked over to her brother. Jon was in a corner with the 2 sisters who stared down at the table. Pate rushed to get Arya a mug of water when she sat. Jane Heddle was on the verge of tears, but Willow tried to keep her wits. I asked them when they expect the Septon again. Jon said to Arya. He usually comes twice a moon, but he came every se'night before the Battle of the 3 Wolves. Willow said. Jon explained his thinking to Arya. The Septon is a spy for Dondarrion. How else could children hold an inn for 4 moons? And how could any unarmed man deliver food on a donkey when Lannister men are around? When you came to the inn, only Willow was here, but her older sister returned a few days later. Why would an innkeep travel? He came twice when I was here. Septon maribbled, I should have known something was strange. Arya said. Jon shrugged. You were tired and hungry. My lord, what will happen to us now? Willow asked, trying not to cry. We need to see what Dondarrion says. Come, Arya. They left the two frightened heddles, clutching each other for comfort. And what should be done with your merry band? Robb said. Lord Stark, they are a bunch of bandits and deserters. Stephen Free snorted. We are brothers here, sworn to the realm, the red-robed man said. Aye. The singer chimed in. The Brotherhood without banners. The Knights of the Hollow Hill. The man that had once been Beric Dondarrion smiled sadly. My lord, we are kingsmen still. Your father, Ned Stark and Hand of the King, charged us with bringing justice to the mountain. 60 men led by a fool in a starry cloak were ambushed at Mummer's Ford. But we still fight to protect the Riverlands for Robert Baratheon. Robert is not the king. He has been dead a year. Robb said. But we still serve his cause. Justice for the realm. The Scarecrow said. You are brigands and broken men. Who have you fought? Brynden Tully said. We bled the goat and the dog. We blooded them near Harrenhal, the archer yelled. Not very many. Clegane had 1,000 men at the Red Fork, the Blackfish replied. Where are the rest of your men, Lord Beric? And how many are they? Jon asked. Before the Lightning Lord could answer, the thin man in red gasped. I have seen your face, my lord. I have seen you before. They say I resemble my father, Lord Stark. Jon replied. No, I have seen you in the fires, in Arla's visions. All the eyes in the inn, from the Heddles to the Riverlords to the orphans to the Northmen, were on the ardent Red Priest. I saw you in a great battle, surrounded by the dead and the dying. You are Azor Ahai, reborn, and death itself will bend the knee before you. Thoros of Myr knelt down and Beric Dondarrion followed. Arya looked at the annoyed face of her brother Jon. He did not seem pleased by the men at his feet. The Starks huddled together out of the prying eyes of the entire inn. The Blackfish and Edmure attended, and the Great Jon, by dint of size and bulk, was the only Northman who managed to squeeze into the small room. After the declaration that Jon was Azor Ahai reborn, the Red Priest had babbled on about the legend of the Lightbringer and dragons, although Arya did not know whether that was a man or the sword. Anyone who killed his wife to make a sword was a fool. Her brother would never do such a thing. What do you make of all this? Robb asked. Perhaps it is all a mummer's fast to save his neck, the Blackfish said. Edmure Tully nodded. I have never heard of this before today. I have read of Azor Ahai, of course, in Votar's Jade Compendium. It is similar to the legend of the prince who was promised and the last hero of the first men. They defeated the others 8,000 years past. But who is to say what happened so long ago? Jon said. One legend I might believe, but the Red Priest says 3. Could you be the subject of 3 prophecies, Jon? Robb said, half jesting but half in wonder. Thoros says that I am the prince who was promised, born amidst salt and smoke under a bleeding star. I don't even know my mother's name. Next he claims that I will deliver the world from darkness and bring a summer that never ends. And last, he swears that the Lord of Light has sent visions of dragons and that the dragon must have 3 heads. Jon said. Why would a dragon need 3 heads? Edmure asked. The conquest had 3 dragons. Aegon and his 2 wives were all dragon riders. Arya said. Arya, I don't think Jon has been hiding a dragon. If he had one, he would have sent it against the Lannister knights when they charged. Robb said. The Red Priestess at the Stormlands, what did she say about Stannis? Jon asked. Melisandre said that Stannis was the Lord of Light's chosen, born amidst salt and smoke. And Renly said that Stannis had a flaming sword. Robb said. This does not matter. Dreams may have power, but prophecies are not to be trusted. Perhaps Thoros sees a vision while another red woman sees another. Who can say what is right? Whether I am Azor Ahai or not, we must defeat our enemies in battle. Jon said. Maester Snow is right. We need swords, not dreams, the Blackfish said. They walked outside into the common room and the chatter immediately died. Her two brothers spoke briefly and then the Lord of Winterfell stepped forth. Lord Beric, these are the terms I will give you. Your men have three choices. They can disperse, and go back to their homes. They can swear an oath to a lord and those vows must be honored. Or they can hang. There will be no more banditry in the Riverlands. Robb said. What about the mountains men? A big man in a yellow cloak cried. I butchered most of them across the Red Fork. I hung the rest 2 days ago. Jon said. Beric Dondarrion stood up from his chair. I accept your terms, Lord Stark. He turned to Jon Snow. Lord Snow, I pledge my sword and service to you. Thoros and the other 10, even tied in ropes, attempted the same. Her brother Jon groaned. The knock came as Tyrion read the message from Petyr Baelish. Littlefinger had succeeded but at the high price. The hand of the king, 2 small council seats, 2 members of the Kingsguard, the commander of the City Watch, and Sansa Stark. In return, the Tyrells would send 40,000 men north with Lady Margaery and Mace Tyrell. Just as importantly, they would open the Rose Road again to wagons of food. The fear of the Northmen remained but at least the famine would end. Podrick, I am not to be disturbed. Tyrion called. The door opened and a tall man with long copper hair walked through. He wore a plain grey cloak and black mail and not the burnished bronze armor of House Marbrand. Sir Adam was the heir to Ashmark, and one of the best knights in Lannister service. He was a good leader, an excellent horseman and swordsman, a childhood friend of Jaime, and one of the few nobles who had always treated him with courtesy. Tyrion. Sir Adam. I am glad that you are alive and free. Tyrion said. It was not easy. The bloody wolf is well named. Your father is here. Adam said. Tyrion took the dozen letters off the desk and walked to the small hall. Tywin Lannister sat in the small hall. His pale green eyes flecked with gold still glared proudly but garbed in plain dark robes and accompanied by only one man, the great lion of the rock had lost his claws. Still, Podrick quivered with fear and Tyrion's guardsmen stood at attention. The squire rushed to pour a bottle of Arbor Gold only to be stopped by a hard stare. Father, I am pleased to see you alive. The black looks good, like you have joined the Night's Watch and mean to travel beyond the wall. Tyrion said. Enough of your japes. Tywin pointed at the letters. Give me the news. And he did. He waited quietly while Tywin digested the details. His father did not like to be disturbed when thinking. Who accompanied Myrcella to Dorne? Sir Aris Oakert and Sir Balon Swan. Even the Dornish will respect a princess escorted by 2 members of the Kingsguard. Tyrion said. How did Balon Swan get a white cloak? Tywin said. There was a riot in King's Landing. The small folk threw shit at the Joffrey's chariot. He ordered Sandor Clegane and the other guards to kill the offender. In the chaos, the High Septon and Sir Preston Greenfield were hacked to death. Sir Jacelyn Bywater cleared the streets with a wedge of mounted lancers. He may have saved Tyrick's life. Tyrion said. See to it that he is rewarded. Tywin said. Already done. I gave him a small keep near Blackwater Rush. Tyrion said. His father nodded. Another knock, in an odd 3-beat pattern, rang on the door. Sir Adam walked through with his sister, dressed in rich raiment, gold lions on crimson silk. Cersei could not be bothered with cloaks or disguises. The spider would know before nightfall who she met in the tower, if he did not already. Sir Adam joined them at the table. Father, I will have rooms prepared for you in the Red Keep. Cersei said. No, I must return to our men. We need to rally the remaining troops, and make certain they do not desert. They cannot hear that I fled to King's Landing. Tywin said brusquely. But you did flee to King's Landing, Tyrion thought. His father had always cast a great shadow, the destroyer of House Rain and Tarbeck. Tywin Lannister was a lion among lions, who could impose his iron will on his bannermen and even the great houses of Westeros. But he had failed at the Red Fork, defeated by 2 Stark boys. The shadow had faded. How many men are left in the army? Cersei asked. We are camped at Rosby. We lost the supply train and need to replenish. We have 9,000 men still. But many are injured and some will die. Thousands more are missing, we do not know if they are dead, prisoners, or deserters. Sir Adam said. But what if the wolves come south on the King's Road? Joffrey will command the army return to King's Landing to defend the throne. Cersei said. Tywine scoffed. Command me. I am saving Joffrey's throne, undeserved that may be. We have friends hidden among the Starks. Men from the twins have gone north. Men from White Harbor have gone to Winterfell. Tyrion realized the implications in a flash. The Greyjoys have attacked the north. Theon Greyjoy escaped to the Iron Islands. The north has few defenses, and no ports on the western side. Robb Stark will need to deal with the raiders. Tywine said. If his forces are split, then we can attack. With the Tyrell forces, we can crush the Starks and the Rivermen. Cersei said. Tywine looked at his daughter with a coolness bordering on frost. No, we will treat with the Starks. We will make peace, bitter though that may be. But father. Cersei said. Have you forgotten your lessons? What is the most important source of power? Tywine said. Tyrion waited for a bit before answering. Armies. A brief flash of approval passed over his father's face before disappearing into a mask. Power comes from swords and spears. And men who are willing to fight and die. The North has those men, and they are well led. We have 9,000 men. Jon Snow has cut off reinforcements and supplies from the west. If we settle with the Starks, we can raise a new army. But by then, the Starks will return north. And Snow has forced captured prisoners to swear they will not attack the north or the Riverlands. Tyrion said. Vows can be broken. But more important is the number of men. How many swords do the Tyrells have? 50,000. We have 9,000. Mace Tyrell may be a dolt, but with 5 times our number, the Roses will control the city. We cannot afford to lose more men fighting against the Starks. We must raise more men and horses. If the Tooth was free, men from Sarsfield, Case, and Feast Fires could march west on the Gold Road. Tywine said. I have sent banners in the name of the King to Stokeworth, Middleton, Hayford, Dunfort and Duskendale. Tyrion said. The betrothal is necessary. But the news should be kept secret until their army leaves the Reach. Tywine said. But why, father? The news of an alliance will calm the city down. Cersei said. The silence isn't for King's Landing. It is to make sure the Starks do not hear so that we can take them by surprise with the size of our forces. Tyrion said. Tywine acknowledged him briefly before turning to Cersei. The death of Ned Stark was a witless blunder. You will keep Joffrey on a leash. If he were to hurt Sansa Stark, the wolves will never retreat. And if they attack King's Landing, and the Tyrells turn on us, we will lose the city. I have tried, father, but he has become harder to control. Cersei said. Tywine spoke in a low voice. Rein him in. He will not harm House Lannister again. Before Cersei could declare Joffrey's loyalty, Lord Tywine and Sir Adam left. Tyrion offered his sister a glass of Dornish red but she stomped off. Another fine Lannister family meeting. And his father wondered why he drank. Tyrion doubled again the guards on Sansa Stark. 500 miles away, Jaime Lannister looked at the strange circles of black and white on his trencher. Riverrun celebrated Robb Stark's latest victory with 2 days of feasting, although the details were still murky. A third direwolf had surfaced north of the Trident, and Jon Snow commanded wolves and ravens to slay Lannister knights. Jaime had never believed in magic or prophecies, but an entire army of beasts was hard to dismiss. He wondered whether these powers explained the defeats at the Whispering Wood or Oxcross. What is this shite? Jaime loudly called. It is food, Kingslayer. And far better than you deserve. Sir Robin Roger said. His uncle Kevan gave him a reproachful look. Janie, sitting on her mother's lap, stared at Jaime, and Martin and Willem giggled. Jaime shrugged and smirked at his cousins. He took a bite of the black pudding, made of cow's blood, suet, oatmeal and onions. The black circle looked like darkened dung, but it was meaty and heavier than sausage. He cut a slice of the white pudding, less salty and more creamy. Jamie washed his food down with watered-down ale. Sir Roger, the captain of the Tully Guards, spoke truthfully. In the whole of the small keep, the squires and western lords ate better than any could hope. Jamie had seen the black cells in King's Landing, windowless, with only dirty straw for a bed, and not even a bucket to shit in. When he was captured at the Whispering Wood, Jamie expected to spend the next few moons, covered in shit and piss and half-starved, until his father ransomed him. Jamie wondered again what Snow was thinking. The Westerman knew that Robb Stark had given his brother full authority over prisoners. Many times, Tully men reminded the captives of the White Wolf's brutality at Oxcross, the Golden Tooth, and even at the Red Fork. But Snow had done nothing to the squires and knights at Riverrun. And the small folk had been released to the west. Jamie chewed the sausage, ignoring the faint tang of blood. Sir Kevan. The boy was garbed in grey and black, homespun wool and leather, like many of the Wintertown crew. But he was tall and fair with sandy gold hair and green eyes. Jamie looked more closely. The eyes were emerald green and flecked with gold, like a Lannister. The boy handed Kevan a scroll. Jamie's uncle opened it and gave a sigh of relief. Sir Robin stepped near and read the note. "We will take care of this, sir. Your wife and daughter will leave Riverrun on the morrow. I will send my own squire, Miles, and 6 guards to make certain they get to the Tooth safely." Sir Robin said. "I thank you, sir." Kevan said. He took his wife's hand and smiled at Janie before turning to the tall blonde boy. "Were you at the battle?" "Aye, my lord." The boy flushed brightly, happy to share the tale. "It was a hard fight. I stood with the White Wolf north of the Red Fork. We turned back the mountains men easily enough, but the van of heavy cavalry was much fiercer." "Who led the van?" the booming voice of Lord Crickehall called out. "A knight with a burning tree sigil rode in the front. But there were thousands of brave men." Sir Adam Marbrand, Jamie thought. He hoped his friend was alive. "How did the North win?" "Lord Tywine had more men and knights." Tybalt Marbrand asked. "Lord Tywine had to cross the Trident to return west. Maester Snow built an enormous wall to defend the north side of the Red Fork, 2 miles long and 10 feet high. We fought from atop the wall over ground bursting with trenches, ditches, pits and traps. Until that battle, I could never have imagined such a field of death," the boy said. "And did Snow summon wolves and ravens?" Sir Kevan asked warily. "I do not know, my lord. There were wolves and ravens. But how they came, only the Maester can say. Another dire wolf joined Ghost in the battle and fought off several hounds. The wall nearly fell. There was blood everywhere. We were close to being overwhelmed. But Jon Snow won. He threw back everything Lord Tywine could send." The boy smiled proudly. Jamie had seen that look before. It was reckless and bold, just like his younger uncles speaking back to his lord father. Both Tyrion and Geryon were kind to Jamie and Tyrion but had strained ties with their head of house. "What is your name, boy?" Jamie said. "Jerry, my lord." The boy bowed, and then walked away. Jamie tried to follow but Sir Robin Roger and Tully guards stopped him. Before they did, he could see waiting outside the door, a slender woman with long dark hair, green-brown eyes, and a broad smile when she embraced her son. He had not seen her in 13 years. Tisha, the crofter's daughter. Suddenly, Jamie knew why Jerry looked so very fair and green-eyed. He woke up to the smell of freshly baked bread. At the Inn of the Crossroads, kitchen boys, their ranks swelled by new recruits, worked at all hours, baking, boiling, roasting, braising, smoking, salting and frying all sorts of victuals. Much went to feed the soldiers but some shared with the starving small folk, as wagons of cooked food and raw supplies were sent to nearby villages and holdfasts. Bread was the staple, a simple, dense bread called hardtack, made of flour, water and salt. Baked several times, hardtack was dry, tasteless, and lasted a long time. The bread was dunked in water or ale, fried in oil, or pounded into crumbs and eaten with soup. John heard Arya's laughter outside the tent as she played with Nymeria. Ghost stood vigilant, guarding the tent door. He drank a cup of water, and poured the rest into a basin to wash. John. Arya saw his haggard face. Are you? I have bad dreams, sister, he said as he continued to wash. She bit her lip. Is it because of all that rubbish about Azor Ahai? Gendry says he met Thoros in King's Landing, and the priest was a glutton and a sot. John chuckled. I worry about many things, Arya. But not the prophecies of the Lord of Light. But Thoros has strange powers. They say he has raised Beric Dondarrion from death 4 times. Arya said. I don't doubt that magic exists or that prophecies may be true. But they are hard to understand. Daenerys Targaryen dreamed of the destruction of Valyria 12 years before the Doom. We cannot stop everything for a priest's visions. I cannot be this prince who was promised if I fall in battle to our enemies. John said. Thoros' tale of Azor Ahai is spreading in the camp. Arya said. John shrugged. Words do not win wars. Come, we have things to do. They walked around that morning with the dire wolves. The roads that met at the inn at the crossroads swarmed with wagons pulled by plough horses. Off the main roads, horses grazed on the grass, and men sharpened weapons and waited for orders. The ferry landing at the inn had been restored, and several boats were tied up, and the boys hard at work fixing sails and oars. Barrels of thick black pine tar sat on the docks, the bitter smell drifting north with the wind. Next to the inn, an open field had been cleared of horses and tents. Even early in the morning, men drilled under the one eye of Beric Dondarrion. On the ground, there were spears, 17 feet in length, cut from stakes scavenged from the fortifications built north of the Red Fork. Each pike had a broad steel leaf head reinforced with metal strip and a bronze butt spike to balance the weight. The pike was held in both hands, and soldiers practiced marching 10 abreast, in several rows. The first rank kept their pikes low and ready to defend against a charging horse, the spike anchored to the ground. The next 3 ranks held their pikes level at the shoulder to deliver thrusts. Behind them, 6 ranks of pikes stabbed straight up in the air. Not all the men came from the brotherhoods without banners. Only a few dozen swore fealty to the Lightning Lord. Some were soldiers, defeated in previous battles, or deserters. Many were small folk who fled their homes and hoped for food to eat and a place to stay. And quite a few had been loyal to landed knights or minor lords whose houses were now extinguished in the male line by the Lannisters, Woad, Cox, Penny, Howick, and many more. Even Lady Went's few soldiers were in the mix, their captain Sir Willis Woad having been slaughtered by the Mountain. There were 400 men already, and more coming every day. John was not certain whether they joined him to seek redemption or to find safety in numbers. Or from fear that he would hang them all. They were a motley crew with an odd mix of weapons and armor. Hence, the constant drills with the pike. He would train them to fight in a disciplined formation, to march without losing cohesion, and to attack as one unit. Pikesmen needed to stay close together for support but not crowd each other. Lords no, the men have no shields. How will they face archers? Beric asked. On the sidelines, small folk and soldiers watched as the men drilled and marched. Highborns, including Lady Went and Lady Smallwood, were present as well, and other companies of men waited for their turn to practice with the pikes. John's voice carried over the field. They will not need a shield. If they train well, I will give them armor. A heavy steel helmet, with a wide brim, a steel breastplate, and greaves to cover their legs. That was far better protection than most of the men in the army could claim. Should I learn how to train with a pike, sir? The boy had pale blonde hair, and dark blue, almost purple, eyes. A name day older than Arya, Edric Dane was shy and polite. John had spent little time with the Lord Beric's squire, but the boy had courage. He pulled the dying Dondarrion out of a river, and stood guard over the body during a battle with the Mountain. The pike is not a weapons for squires. It weighs 12 pounds and must be carried at all times with both hands marching and in battle. John said. But Lord Snow, we wish to fight with you. An orphan from the inn cried. John wasn't sure if the boy was named Pate, Wat, or Elmo. There was at least half a dozen Pates running about in the camp, and many more Wats and Elmos. It is not safe. It would be better if you stayed away from battle. John said. My lord, nowhere in the Riverlands is safe. My father, mother, aunts and uncles were all killed at Wendish Town. John Penny said, and the other boys nodded. If we fight with you, we have a chance. We may not be as clever as your Winter Town boys, but let us join you. John sighed. I do not want any of you in danger. You will not fight in battle, but you can help the men. He pointed to the formation, a square 10 files wide and 10 ranks deep. In battle, men get confused. If you play music, the pikesmen can march in order and stay in a line. Music, sir. Like a wood-up? The boy who he thought was Pate asked. Harps. We are not looking for silly love songs. John scoffed. No, a drum. You would beat a drum to keep marching in step. And you would have to learn other signals. To stop, to go forward, to attack. You would learn how to send signals on the battlefield. The orphan boys glowed with excitement, and John sent them off to get drums made. He kept Arya and Edric close. Like his sister, Edric was a skilled rider. He would prefer them mounted in any battle. John did not like the idea of boys the age of Arya in battle. But if the pike formation broke down and routed, all the footmen would be killed by cavalry. In war, sometimes the only good choice was still a bad one. The cacophony of drumming outside John's tent stopped suddenly. The flap opened and grey wind entered first, followed by a grim Robb Stark. John stood up, leaving the letter to Lady Mormont at the Golden Tooth unfinished. Robb signalled for Arya to follow, and the three proceeded to the main tent. Several riverlords stood outside and gave their sympathies to Robb in passing. The Blackfish was comforting his niece and nephew inside. Hoster Tully has passed. Robb said. We received a raven from Riverrun this afternoon. Lysa never visited. And now he has passed. Caitlin said. Hoster Tully had been dying for many moons. The silence from the Vale was telling and boded poorly for Sir Robar's mission. The rivermen will need to return to sea to the funeral. Hoster will sail down the Red Fork one last time to sink into the Trident. Many of the bannermen will return to Riverrun. Lord Mallister, Blackwood, Bracken, Piper, and Vance will set the boat adrift, and Ed Muir, as the new Lord Tully, will shoot the arrow to set the sails on fire. Brynden said. I am sorry to hear, Uncle, and I will release your bannerman today. Robb said. But Robb, won't you attend as well? Caitlin said. Mother, I have a war to fight. I can best honor Lord Tully by freeing the Riverlands. Harrenhal is still in the hands of the Lannisters. We do not control the fields south of Harroway. Robb said. But Robb, you are the heir to Riverrun until Ed Muir has children. Caitlin said. I am a Stark. My place is at Winterfell. Riverrun is for the Tullys. Robb said. Cat, we should go. Hoster's liegemen are outside and will want to speak. Your son has the right of it. Your father was happy when the siege of Riverrun was broken. He will smile more from his watery grave if the invaders are driven from all of the Riverlands. Brynden said. Caitlin hesitated, and looked at Arya. She retreated between her two brothers and had no intention of leaving their side or Nymeria. Lady Stark bowed her head and left with the Tullys. Robb waited, and then signalled to his squire to make certain he was not disturbed. The Stark guards retreated, and the direwolves guarded the tent. The brothers huddled over the map. I will leave tonight. After the Tullys depart with the rivermen. Robb said. Are you certain? I could go in your stead. The North looks to you for leadership, and your last trip to the Reach took a moon's time. John said. Robb shook his head. John, when I am gone, you have command. And you need to train these new men anyway. Besides, if we siege Harrenhal, you must deploy the artillery. Arya glared at her brothers with great annoyance. What are you two talking about? John raised his head. The Neck is 500 miles away from here on the King's Road. I remember. It took over a moon to come down from Moat Cailin with the king. But John noticed something. The Green Fork runs from the crossroads to Greywater Watch. With winds blowing north, and strong rowers, a boat can travel it in 4 days. It is less than 100 miles from there to Moat Cailin and the Fever River. Robb said. But that is all swamps and bogs. Arya said. Yes, but the Crannock men know how to travel in bogs. They can go faster in their little boats than the Ironborn can cross on foot. Father said House Reed knows the neck better than anyone. Rob said. You mean to go north and ambush them? That is why the dock was repaired and John's crew fixed the ships. Arya said. Actually I meant to go north. But Rob decided he would lead the men. John complained. Only one of us can leave. And I am the Lord of Winterfell. The Ironborn wish to capture Moat Cailin so they can raid my bannermen with impunity. I am going to stop them. I will burn Victor on Greyjoy's ship and see how squids fare in a swamp. Rob said. But you don't have many men. Arya quickly made the connections. The pitch, those barrels of tar on the docks. You are going to use them to set the longships on fire. Rob nodded. I plan to take Marndaeli, Umbers, and Flints. The Flints know the neck well, the Marndaelis are sailors, and the Umbers, well they enjoy killing squids. But you are not telling the Rivermen? Arya asked. The Greyjoys are attacking the north, and I will pay the iron price at Moat Cailin. I want the mission to be secret, and not a hint, until we are ready to burn the ships. Rob said. John has an equally important task. He needs to go south, and take Harrenhal. It is a strong castle, and we need to make certain the Lannisters cannot return. Plus, the sellswords operated from Harrenhal. The area near the God's Eye was pillaged worse than the rest of the Riverlands, and that is saying a great deal. John said. The septs south of Harroway have all been looted and the men and women killed or worse. This Vargo Hoat is a torturer. His men are scum, just like Clegane's creatures. Rob said. Tywin Lannister does not care. He is happy to employ monsters. The only thing that matters to him is the glory of House Lannister. Arya said. Then make Tywin pay. Take the castle, John. Rob said. All right, be careful, Stark. No fighting shadow assassins with only a dagger. John jested. Grey Wind will be with me. And Arya, listen to John. Be safe, sister. I will see both of you soon. Rob embraced his siblings. He would do so again after nightfall, when he left with 3 ships, loaded with 100 men and barrels of pitch and tar. Arya Stark tried her best not to go numb as the army marched down to Harrenhal. Fear cuts deeper than swords. The land was gentle here, rolling hills and terraced fields interspersed with meadows, woodlands and shallow streams. She remembered hiding, running, and the smell of burning. When she stumbled around the Riverlands with Yoren and after he died, every place smelled of fire. Farms, villages, castles, septs, barns, inns. It did not matter. If it burned, the Lannisters had burnt it. Since yesterday afternoon, the Northern Army, divided into 2 columns of infantry supported by cavalry, marched from the inn at the crossroads south. One column had gone on the King's Road, to control the border with the Crown lands. Those men would turn right and meet them at the castle. The second headed directly for Harrenhal and included the new recruits. Her brother oversaw the pike squares, trying to march in tune to boys banging loud drums. The army was in fine spirits, laughing and jesting, boasting about their battle prowess. As the army passed, wisps of pale smoke emerged at villages, holdfasts and keeps. Children, some shy, many wary, emerged from hills and forests and were given food and drink. Corpses were buried, walls rebuilt, and gates fixed. Life slowly returned to the Riverlands. Merchants and tinkerers traveled the roads, and farmers tried their best to get one last harvest before winter. Arya bit her lip. When she had been lost with Gendry and Hot Pie, no one had helped. The small folk, the highborn, they had all cowered and fled before the lion. No traveler shared a fire, and no place of safety was offered. You look thoughtful, little wolf. Daisy rode next to her, in plate and with Morning Star ready. Many of Rob's battle guard went north on the Trident, but Mormont, Eddard Karstark, and Small Janumber stayed south. Daisy was no water dancer, but she gave Arya tips on fighting. When the Lannisters were raiding and killing, where were they? All these people. Arya said. Are you asking why the villagers didn't fight? Or why you did not? Daisy said. I know it is not fair. But where were the men? Couldn't they have fought? or helped me. Do you know what the women on Bear Island are famous for? Daisy said. Beating back raids. You won the tourney at Riverrun and defeated a Harlaw and a Lannister knight on the final day. Arya said. Men fish, and women fight attacks from Ironborn and wildlings. But the largest raid I ever saw was Lord Drum with 5 longships and 150 men. We hurled them back to his Shithole Island. But what if it was the whole Iron Fleet? What if 10,000 raiders landed at Bear Island? Daisy said. You would have to retreat into the forest or hide behind your walls. Arya said. These villagers had to flee. You cannot expect them to be brave against such odds. Only heroes are that way. Your father would never stop fighting to defend the north. And his sons, Robb and Jon, are cut from the same cloth. You will be, too, little wolf. Daisy said. The Smallgen says at the Red Fork, the North defeated 4 times their number. Arya said. The Smallgen can barely count. Daisy snorted. But yes, your brothers are unbeaten in the field, and the men know that. That is why the small folk have returned. The horses stopped and Arya saw a cloud of dust coming from the west. A horde of men were marching to meet them. It was too early for the second column on the King's Road to rejoin the main force. Daisy urged her horse over and Arya followed. Jon waited on a hill with Ghost under the banner of the White Wolf. Ragged men and torn banners approached. A few well-armed knights on horses were at the front, but the rest looked like a peasant militia. Most were dirty men in simple brown clothes, armed with cudgels and axes. A few had carved a 7-pointed star into their foreheads. There were a few children with scraped shins and curious yes. Jon Snow. A man with 6 white stars on a purple field asked. Her brother nodded. And who are you? Sir Raymond Mallory. Word has spread that you mean to attack Harrenhal. We would join you. We want revenge for what these bastards have done to our lands, the knight said. Mallory. Isn't that a house in the Crown Lands? Jon said. Aye. The Mountains men killed Lord Lothar at Mummer's Ford. But since they have raided our lands. The one who led the soldiers had a manticore on his shield and slaughtered our chickens and sheep, and tried to burn us out of my lady's tower, he said. And do you command these other men? Jon asked. A man in threadbare robes belted with a hempen rope stepped forward. No, my lord. I am from the September nearby that was burnt down. The brothers that survived have come with me. There are villagers whose fields were ruined, and other small folk from around the God's Eye. Arya waited as her brother examined them carefully. Only a few rode horses. Most were barefoot with no armor. How exactly did you expect to get your revenge? Jon asked. What do you mean? Sir Raymond said. Harrenhal is a castle. You have no ladders, grappling hooks, or any way to climb the walls. You have no siege equipment. Jon said. A burly man with a hammer pushed to the front. We heard you was coming. And that you are good at killing. Jon held his hand. I am going to capture Harrenhal. But if you want to come, you must obey my orders. I will restore order in the Riverlands, and that means there is one voice. I speak for Robb Stark and the army. There will be no banditry, no dissent. You will follow my orders or hang. The knights, the men of faith, and the villagers agreed. Arya crept closer to her brother. Do you trust these people, Jon? They might be spies for the Lannisters, or worse, Vargo Hoat. Jon chuckled. I don't trust anyone, Arya. Well, you and Robb. Stay close to me, sister. The 3 ships docked at Greywater Watch and Robb Stark greeted Howland Reed. The Crannog men escorted them to a small but cozy hall. The taller Northmen had to crouch so that their heads did not hit the low roof. Lord Stark, my sympathy for your loss. Your father Ned was a good man. Lord Reed said. Thank you, my lord. Robb handed over a leather tube. The men gathered closer to examine the diagrams on the scroll. What is that thing? The Great Jon said. It is Jon's design. He calls it a hellburner. You create a fire chamber on the ship with a floor and a roof. The pitch is packed into the chamber, and covered with kindling and coal. These long wood plugs are hollow, and full of wax. John says if you light one side, you have enough time to run 1,000 paces before the inner side lights and explodes. Rob said. So, this is a fireship. But the Ironborn won't think much of it because it will seem like a regular canoe. Howland said. It seems only a small flame, but when the pitch is lit, everything explodes. John believes it should blow a hole in the hull of a longship. He also gave me these. Rob took out 2 earthen pots that were sealed. A bit of white dust could be seen on the outside. And what are those? Howland asked. I do not know. John discovered this when he was using limestone in the blast furnace. He says that when the pot shatters and this dust meets with water, a cloud of smoke rises that causes blindness and burns. Rob said. I plan to throw this at Victorian Greyjoy. Murmurs of sorcery and magic could be heard in the hall. Rob ignored the comments and waited for Lord Reed's reply. The ships are still in the Fever River. Arkady Boggs, my best scout, sent a message. Men from the Barrows and the Rills have attacked from the north, and slowed the fleet down. Reed said. Have you seen the flagship? Rob said. The Iron Victory is the largest vessel. The sail has a golden kraken on a black field. Victorian Greyjoy will captain that ship with the best fighters of the Iron Fleet. Give me 2 days to transport you and prepare the fireships. We will attack then. Howland said. They could see the twisted 5 towers of Harin's Folly on the horizon, and the pewter water of the God's Eye beyond. The blue and green water had turned into cold steel. Winter was coming, and the black swans and other birds had disappeared. The host had slowed down, waiting for siege machines, wagons and the second column to catch up. The cavalry scouted the lake, checking the abandoned settlements to make certain there were no hidden Lannister soldiers. Arya sat at the fire next to Gendry, squires, and the Winter Town boys. Nymeria had gone off to hunt with Ghost. John was in his tent, meeting with Geryon and Satin who had returned from Riverrun. Lord Beric and Thoros was on patrol, and Northmen sharpened and checked their weapons, preparing for battle. The town outside the walls had been burnt to blackened stone. That was where the Lannister army had camped while Arya was trapped in the castle. Do you think the Bloody Wolf will use the ballistas to destroy the walls? A boy asked. The weakest curtain wall at the castle was 15 feet thick. The towers rose over 150 feet tall. There were pits in the castle 30 feet deep. Harrenhal might be cursed, but it was monstrously hard to take, and her brother did not have dragons. I hear that Snow might turn into a giant raven, and fly over the walls. Pate said. Arya hoped that the boy could at least keep a tune drumming. Thinking was not his strong suit. Lady Arya, will you give me your favor? Edric said. This will be my first true battle. Gendry snorted. You have been with the Brotherhood for months. How did you not manage to do any fighting? Leave the boy alone. We have been in skirmishes. Ned hasn't fought, but he saved Sir Beric's body and guarded the horses. Harwin said. Right. Without Ned, we might have all died against the mountain. Alyn said. Alyn was another Winterfell guard who joined the Brotherhood after being ambushed. He was sweet on Jane Heddle, who had nursed him back to health after Mummer's Ford. Arya did not understand how men, even her brother Robb, were such fools over nurses. It will be a hard battle. Sieges are never easy. Tom of Seven Streams said. How would you know? You have never been in one. A man with a green beard hooted. I will challenge Vargo Hoat in single battle. They will call me the Ghostlayer, a man cried out. You are more likely to be a goat fucker. Greenbeard retorted. Arya was tired of all these fools. Even Lady Went would be better company, and she was always crying over how her men and servants were killed by the Lannisters. As Arya got up to leave, the Shebe rode into the camp. Where is Lord Snow? Daisy said. The Lannister banners have been struck from Harrenhal. There are bodies that have been thrown from the walls, and signs of battle. Arya took Daisy to Jon, and Eddard Carstark, Small Janumber, and many other commanders followed. Squires raced to get horses readied, and men rushed to don their armor. Robb could hear laughter ring out less than a few hundred feet away. They were at the head of the Fever River, hidden behind huge half-drowned trees. Even though streams and creeks ran into the Fever, the water was green and covered with fungus. It was hard to tell the submerged logs floating in the water from lizard lions cleverly hidden under twigs. 3 dozen longships were beached on the rocks, and the largest flew the Golden Kraken on a black sail. "Why aren't there more ships?" he whispered. "Many ships are guarding the entrance to the Salt Spear. And the barrowmen have managed to attack a few, so I suspect they have left some behind to defend against raids. They have also just arrived, so there may be more sailing east." Rob looked through the spyglass that John gifted to him. There were guards on the longships, but they all faced north. He rubbed Grey Wind and looked at the 8 fireships, loaded with pitch, and carrying long fuses. "We attack after nightfall. Prepare bows, arrows and spears." "Will we be able to see, Lord Stark?" Willis Marndale asked. "Yes, by the fires of their burning boats," Rob said. They waited after sunset and the changing of the guard. There were only a few men watching on each boat. The Ironborn had chosen not to camp on swampy land, preferring to sleep on their ships. With luck, they would burn to death under their decks. Rob signaled for quiet as the Northmen readied the weapons. Several Crannog men readied the fireboats, and lit the fuses as they pushed the modified canoes to the warships. The boats lurched unsteadily with the current and the Crannog men noiselessly escaped on their skiffs, darting down behind rocks and trees with their short bows and spears. For minutes, nothing happened as the only thin wreaths of smoke were seen drifting to the longships. The Ironborn turned and pointed at the boats with derisive laughter. The Crannog men's canoes were dwarfed by the mighty longships, and barely made a dent. Then the world went on fire. The first boat exploded, ripping a hole into a longship. The air was filled with a rain of wooden shards, kindling, and stone, intermixed with the heads, limbs and bodies of the guards. Other boats burst into flame, and the screams of unseen men filled the air. Sails caught on fire and holes could be seen where oarlocks had once been fitted into gunwales. The Fever River turned red with flame. Unarmored Ironborn rushed to the deck, their bodies illuminated in the night. "Fire!" Rob cried. Umber and Marndale men hurled spears from the shore. Flint archers aimed volleys of arrows at clusters of men gathered on the decks. Some men dived off the longships only to be stabbed in midair by 3-pronged frog spears or a Marndale trident. The fire spread from boat to boat, as longships rammed into each other, trying to escape from the inferno. The Ironborn could not see into the darkness. The Northmen had no such problems. Ships began to sink with men still trapped underneath. Rob and Grey Wind crept closer to the largest boat. A loud bellow split the night as men tried desperately to put out the fires on the Kraken sail of the Iron Victory. The furious scream came from Victorian Greyjoy, clad in lobstered plate mail, and Rob took the 2 earthenware pots and hurled it on the deck. The pots shattered, and a cloud of white dust billowed out. Ironborn screamed when the dust hit their skin, and men toppled on the floor, clawing at their eyes. The crew on the Iron Victory tried to escape the white smoke, and the deck became a miasma of confusion, even as arrows and spears whistled through the air into the Ironborn. Victorian Greyjoy growled and put on his great helm, shaped like a kraken. 8 tentacles stretched from head and chin, and the Lord Captain of the Iron Fleet jumped into the knee-high water. The sight astonished Rob. Victorian wore full plate mail, a heavy cloak with layers of gold cloth, a full helm, and a massive battle axe in the right hand, and a large kite shield in the other. "I challenge you Greenlanders to single combat," Victorian bellowed. Rob held out his hand to Howland Reed. The Cranogman handed over a net weighted with metal hooks. Grey Wind growled, and Victorian strode toward the dire wolf. Rob threw the net, and it landed squarely. Rob and the Great Yon pulled, and Greyjoy was swept off his feet, landing headfirst into the murky water. Victorian struggled to rise, but Grey Wind pounced, slamming the helmet deeper into the mud, and Lord Reed stabbed his frog spear into the axe arm. Rob stepped forward as the Great Yon held the head under water. With Valyrian steel, Rob hacked the Lord Captain's head off, still in the Kraken helm. He lifted it high in the air, blood dripping from the neck. "Here is your fucking iron price," Rob yelled at the longships. A wild cheer came from the Northerners. "Young wolf," they roared happily. The chant of Winterfell filled the night. The archers continued to release deadly volleys, but most of Rob's men waited on shore to meet their enemies with sword, axe and spear. No quarter was given. The next morning, John waited a fair distance outside the main gate of Harrenhal. A white flag of parley had been hung on the gatehouse last night, but he preferred the light of day. Hornwood, Locke and Norrie held large tower shields, watching the walls in case of arrow or crossbow fire. Dacey, Smallgen, Eddard, and Beric were behind him. A dozen ballistas were manned by the Wintertown boys, and Jerry had returned to the crew after delivering Owen's Raven yesterday. A pallid man with red-rimmed eyes and thin hair rode out on a black and white Zeus, followed by a fat brown-skinned Dothraki and a jester with a severed head at his belt. A tall gaunt man paced above the gatehouse. He had a long ropey beard, which dangled below his belt. "That is Vargo Hoat," Arya whispered, pointing to the leader of the brave companions on the wall. "Snow," the cadaver on the Zeus said. "My leader would invite you to speak inside the castle." Jon shook his head. "You could pour hot oil on my men from the murder holes in the gatehouse." "What does he want?" "To change employers," the jester giggled. "I am not in command." "You would have to speak to Vargo Hoat," the first man said. "Tell him to come down, then. Else there will be no parley," Jon said. "He will speak to you from the battlements," the cadaver said. 3 Caro ballistas moved forward, pulled by mules. "If he attempts a shot, I will fire a few in return," Jon said. He moved forward with his guard. Vargo Hoat spoke with a heavy lisp. "Snow. I have captured the Lannisters. I will give them to you if you let me go." "What happened with the Lannister men? And how many are left?" Jon said. "We had a disagreement. They did not want to live. I do." The goat had an ugly smile. "I have captured this Lork. There are 60 Lannisters locked up in the dungeons. Some of them may have lost a few parts." The 2 ugly men with Hoat, one short, the other hairy, laughed. "What do you want?" Jon asked. "I have heard that you Starks care about honor. I want an oath that none of your men will harm me, and that I will be allowed to leave Harrenhal." Hoat looked at the other brave companions. "And my men will not be harmed by yours either. Is Lork alive?" Jon asked. "Yes, and unharmed. But I wish to feed him to a bear," Hoat said. "Very well. But you will come down and escort me through the gatehouse. You will not leave my side, and your men will put down their arms. In return, I swear on the honor of House Stark that you and your men will not be harmed by my forces. And that you will leave the castle," Jon said. Vargo Hoat grinned, a look of triumph on his gaunt face. Jon walked back, and prepared his troops to march into Harrenhal. In the tent, an outraged Sir Raymond yelled and screamed. The bitterness of the small folk and the Septons was clear to all, and the former members of the Brotherhood seethed with anger. Even the Northmen and squires looked uncomfortable. Only Dacey, Eddard, the Smallgen were unbothered, and the Wintertown boys were outside, readying wagons. "Vargo Hoat is a monster. He is a torturer and a killer," Beric said. "My lord, I wish to reclaim Harrenhal but not to let these murderers go free," Lady Shella said. "What did you promise, Sir Beric? Have you forgotten your words? You all swore an oath of fealty. The entire Brotherhood. And Sir Raymond, you vowed to follow me. As did the Septons and the small folk. I hold you to these pledges. My men will do no harm to Vargo Hoat and the brave companions. Anyone who disobeys will hang." Jon said too much grumbling. He talked to the Smallgen and Eddard quietly. The 2 men listened, and then left the tent. Jon pulled Arya and Dacey close. "Arya, stay with me. Keep needle ready." With the goat at his side, Jon walked through the great gatehouse. He had been here before, long ago in another life. He remembered the King's Spire, the slagged stone and the arching stone bridge. He remembered the sight from high up the tower, looking over the deep blue of the God's Eye. The goat lisped and slobbered, prattling on about bathhouses and dungeons. Jon could only make out one of every 3 words, as Hoat's chains of coins clinked. Northmen surged into the castle, securing every gate, the main barracks, and the whole of the 100 hearths. Jon passed many frightened servants on the way to the middle ward. "And this is the bear pit," Hoat declared. The arena below was substantial, an oval 30 feet by 15 feet, walled in stone and floored with sand. 6 tiers of marble benches overlooked the bear pit, and Jon could see traces of dried blood in the sand. Who are they? John said, pointing at 3 squirming figures. They were naked and hairless, shaved from head to toe, and tied to wooden stocks. They were separated by crude wood blocks from the main pit. Ah, I have saved some girls for you. These ones slept with Lannister men. You may have first use. Hoat said gallantly. John calmed Daisy down with a look. The she-bear had stayed close to Arya. The room was full of sniggering brave companions. There were at least 15 of Hoat's followers. They were outnumbered though by John's battle guard and dozens of burly Karstark and Umber men. Where are the prisoners? He asked. Vargo Hoat smiled like the ringmaster of a circus. With a wave of his hand, an old servant brought out a sobbing pale man, naked except for ropes around his neck and hands. Amory Lorque was portly, piggish, and pathetic as he begged for his life. 5 other Lannisters were dragged out, bound together. Some had lost their foot, and others their hands. John called out to the burly man in front, who still stood proudly and glared at Hoat. What is your name? Sir Harrock of Kenning, the strong man said. He had been beaten about the face and his right arm ended at the wrist. There was still blood, so the right hand had been severed recently. Tell me, Sir Harrock. Can you still use your left hand? John said. The big man nodded. That was sufficient, he thought. John motioned to Eddard and the small Jon. The youngest Karstark brought out an ivory warhorn, and blew a blast. The small Jon grabbed Hoat's arms and forced the Kohurik down to the ground. All around the room, Umber and Karstark overpowered and restrained the companions with sheer numbers. What is this? You swore on your honor. Vargo Hoat yelled. That my men would not harm you. And that is true, they will not. John said. Lords no, we will hunt down the other scum, but what if they resist? Eddard asked. If they attack you, they violated the promise. But I want them captured, if possible. John said. The younger Karstark and his men rushed out, spreading to all parts of Harrenhal. In a short time, the northern army captured the remaining sellswords. An ugly squat man attempted to escape but Ghost dragged him down, taking care not to kill. John waited as they marched the brave companions, with the servants back to the bear pit. He was surprised that there were less than 24 of the latter for such an enormous castle. There were another 40 small folk, but it was not clear if they were prisoners or had served willingly. When most of the castle was herded into the middle ward, John began. I swore an oath that my men would not harm the brave companions, and that is true. But the Lannisters are not my men. Sir Harrock. John called. You are the bloody wolf, the knight said, eyes bulging. John nodded. Hoat was tied up in rope and gagged. The gag was taken off before the small Jon and Eddard lowered him into the bear pit. Vargo Hoat, you shall receive the same terms you gave others. Sir Harrock, your men have my blessing to proceed. I want the goat dying, not dead. And to be dying for a long time. Before his death, he will leave Harrenhal as promised. Sir Harrock grinned, and hobbled to the gibbering goat. He picked up a loose stone in his left hand. The screaming began soon after. John turned to Chet. Do we have stakes and rope? Some, my lord. But not enough ropes. But we could use their clothes to tie them fast to the stakes. You just have to rip the clothes into shreds first. Chet said. We don't need stakes. There are trees around the lake. We could use those. Clydas added. Smart lads. Small Jon, lower more men into the pit. This should not take all day. Jerry, bring in a wagon, so we can transport this scum out of the castle before they die. John said. Couldn't we use the bear? Would be faster. Small Jon said. No, I want them to die outside. And besides, it is cruel to the bear. Bring Lorque out of the pit unharmed. I have plans for him. John turned to the servants. Like many in the room, they were in shock with fright. Now tell me, how exactly did you serve the Lannisters? The servants stammered and stuttered. Most kept their mouth shut, their eyes down, and their words unintelligible. A few pointed fingers at others. Goodwife Mabel blamed Weiss for leading her astray. Goodwife Hara, an even older woman, begged for Lady Went's kindness. Pinky prayed to the seven as the screaming from the pit got louder. Gendry stood up and shouted to be heard. Lords, no, the Smiths have done nothing wrong. Lucan and Ben Blackthumb just make swords, shields and horseshoes. They made them for the Wents, the Lannisters, and everyone else in this castle. True. It is hard to hear over these sellswords. They do not seem brave now. Jon mused. He pivoted again to the servants. Will you serve Lady Went faithfully? Of course, my lord. The first to speak was the obsequious Maester Wolf. Jon wondered if the man was assigned by the Citadel or worked for Tywin Lannister. His loyalty was dubious. The others rushed to agree. Daisy brought the three naked girls from the pit, with scraps of cloth over their private parts. The prettiest one, a buxom brunette, fell immediately to her knees. My lord, please spare me. I will do anything you ask, anything. The other two were too terrified to say a word. That one slept with Lannister knights and a brave companion. She is a harlot. Mabel cried. What is your name? Jon asked kindly. Pia, my lord. I work in the buttery. No one will harm you. If any man touches you, I will geld them and then hang them. Now get dressed, the three of you. Jon said before turning to the other servants. If I see any mistreatment of small folk, I will not be pleased. You do not want that. Jon dismissed the servants, and asked that dinner should be served at the usual hour. He also wanted a full inventory of supplies and weapons, particularly siege equipment, to be given to Chet. The northern lords, rivermen, squires and small folk looked on with stunned horror, as the brave companions were brutally dispatched, broken legs, shattered arms, tongues ripped out, teeth smashed in, entrails removed. Shit and blood was everywhere on the sand. Lords, no, what do you plan to do with the Lannister prisoners? Small Jon asked. Find out from Lork who foraged and burned the villages. All the men who followed him will die. Very few Lannister men will be alive by nightfall. Jon said. My lord, should these men not receive a trial? A man should not be slain unless his crimes have been proven. Sir Beric said. Those are your words. I have no desire or patience for trials by combat or pretty words. In any land, justice can have only one master. Otherwise it is chaos, and rule by force. Outside, all of you were hungry for blood. I have given it to you, and yet you complain. The riverlands will be cleared and scoured clean. No more bandits, no more crimes, no more looting. Jon said. The faith of the Seven says that a man may ask for trial by combat. A Septon said timidly. Are all Septons great fools? If that was Sir Gregor Clegane who raped your daughters, burnt your lands, and slaughtered your men, would you allow him a trial by combat? So he can escape to do more killing. These monsters roamed the riverlands for many moons. Your gods and lords were of no help. They will be in the seven hells by nightfall. Jon said. The first dozen brave companions were dying. Northmen pulled them up by rope and loaded them on a wagon. A defrocked Septon and a disgraced Maester begged for mercy and asked for a clean death. Jon looked at the shabby carbine and shook his head. The bloody mummers would reap what they sowed. The wagon left the castle, trailed by Septons, Crownland knights, small folk. The Wintertown boys and Jon Snow had gone ahead. He was guarded by the direwolves and a company of umber men. Vargo Hoat was given special treatment. The goat was crucified on a cross, his hands and feet nailed into the beams by a Lannister prisoner. The other brave companions were tied to trees, and left to die. Jon asked that each man be hung 50 paces apart. By the afternoon, a forest of screaming mewling men had sprung up outside the God's Eye. It stretched for miles, a wall of dying men, and villagers and townsfolk gathered in awe to see their tormentors tormented. Jon raised his hands to the sky, and clouds of ravens flew down. The carrion birds feasted on living flesh. Tyrion Lannister sat with the rest of the small council in the Red Keep. He had thought his sister's presence as Queen Regent had been bad enough. That was before Joffrey had started to attend. Now, every session devolved into ranting and screaming with the other members attempting to curry favor with the Boy King. There was not enough wine in King's Landing or even the entire Arbor to make these meetings palatable. A small child dashed into the room, avoiding Samandan Moore and Samarin Trant. The boy handed a piece of paper to Varys and disappeared. The spider read the message, and then clucked in alarm. "What has happened?" Cersei shouted. "Jon Snow has taken Harrenhal. The Northern Army is now only 200 miles away. The Stark banner has been seen far south on the King's Road as Southhorn," Varys said. Joffrey's face turned a mix of red and white. His nephew was furious and afraid, Tyrion thought. How did he take Harrenhal in a week? "My father left a garrison," Tyrion said. "I cannot say, Lord Hand. My little bird reports that Jon Snow crucified hundreds outside the castle. He cut off hands, feet, tongues and cocks. Ravens ate the eyes of prisoners while they were still alive. Perhaps Snow fed the goat to a goat." Varys tittered at the poor joke. "He is only 2 days away. Where are the Tyrells? Where is Lord Tywine?" Joffrey yelled. "I am certain your good father is coming as quickly as possible," Baelish said. "We have called the banners in the Crown lands. Duskendale and Stokeworth are sending levies to join your grandfather," Tyrion said. "But those men should be in King's Landing defending his grace. After all, they swore fealty to the throne, not Casterly Rock." Baelish smirked. "Lord Baelish is right. I am their lord. They should defend me." Joffrey ranted. "Sweeterling, they are needed in the field," Cersei said. "I am their king. Pycelle, send a raven. I want them as my personal guards," Joffrey said. Tyrion would have slapped his own head if he wasn't drinking wine. The stupidity of the powerful astonished him. The guards at the Red Keep were carefully chosen for loyalty. Now Joffrey wanted unknown strangers patrolling the halls. He truly was an idiot. "Your Grace, you should meet soon with the Tyrells. Their demands are considerable. We need to be certain of their absolute loyalty," Baelish said. The betrothal had yet to be announced, per Tywine Lannister's clear orders. "What do you mean? Could they betray us?" Joffrey asked. "The wolves are clever. The might of Highgarden must be turned against the Starks. If they were to conspire together against your grace and the throne," Baelish said. Joffrey turned a deeper shade of red. Tyrion sighed. His lord father would not like this at all. Tyrion returned to the Tower of the Hand. The meeting ended with Cersei trying to calm Joffrey down. Even Baelish claimed surprise at the depth of the king's rage. Tyrion had always known his oldest nephew had a horrible temper, but his sister had hidden it well. Temperament did not improve with the crown. When he entered the small hall, Bronn and Podrick waited at a table with sellswords. Podrick had already bought out several bottles of Dornish Red and Arbor Gold, and poured several goblets. Tyrion did not need Bronn's glare or Podrick's pained expression to realize this conversation would be unpleasant. "Have you heard the news?" "They say that," Bronn said. "Jon Snow has taken Harrenhal," Tyrion said. He drank one goblet and reached for the second. It was remarkable how fast the story traveled. Either Varys was the source or other groups like the Faith had spies at the castle. Perhaps both were true. "What are you going to do?" Bronn asked. Tyrion waited for the muttering of the sellswords to stop. "What can I do? I will not march to Harrenhal. You have me confused with Aegon the Conqueror. I am a bit shorter, I do not have 2 wives, and no dragons. Unlike you, I have been doing something," Bronn said acidly. "Podrick, being her out. The girl that Pod escorted from behind the screen might have been pretty, had she not looked like a little mouse. She was skinny, with dark hair and small-bosomed. Her brown eyes were hollow and she could not meet his gaze. She was skittish, no, she was scared to death. Something terrible had happened to her." A loud cry came from the corner where a beautiful girl knitted in the sunlight. "Jane! Jane!" Sansa Stark rushed over. The girl began to shake and sob and threw herself at Sansa's feet. "Please, my lady. Please. Save me." Jane whimpered on the floor, like a kicked dog. Her tears soaked Sansa's dress. "What have you done to her?" Sansa demanded. She wrapped the girl in her arms. Tyrion felt hard-pressed by this turn of events. Being the hand of the king was not as glorious as expected. He glared at Bronn. The sellsword stared back hard. We found her at Baelish's brothel, the one off the Street of Silk, near Fishmonger's Square. Baelish's man Jones refused to talk until I cut off 2 fingers. Her name is Jane Poole. Littlefinger had some crazy plan to sell her as Arya or Sansa Stark. Bronn said. Tyrion wondered who would name himself Jones. Was that a first name or a last one? Then again, Bronn had no compunctions about killing small folk. In all likelihood, this person was floating in the harbor. Did anyone else see you? He said. Bronn shook his head. We stole some gold from the strongbox and took some records. It will look like the man ran away with her. Tyrion doubted that Baelish would think that. Lady Sansa, who is this Jane Poole? Our steward's daughter. The queen mounted his head on a spike with my scepter. Sansa said. My lady, they forced me to be with many men. I didn't want to, I swear. Jane cried. We found her naked, with a chain about her neck tied to the wall. She was on her back, and her legs were. Bronn stopped. He might be a whoremonger, but the sellsword had no desire to torment the girl further. These things happen in war, Tyrion said and reached for another goblet. She is my best friend. How could Baelish do this? How could anyone be this cruel? Sansa hugged Jane Poole tightly. Tyrion remembered Lady Tisha of House Silverfist, whose sigil was a gold coin and 100 silver stags on a bloody sheet. My father is a greater monster than Littlefinger, he thought. Bronn wrenched the wine goblet from his hands. Imp, I got you the girl. Use the brains that you are famous for. Bronn said. Lady Sansa. Is Jane Poole friendly with your brothers Robb and Jon? Do they care about her at all? Tyrion said. Sansa scrunched up her pretty face. Jane. She was fond of Robb, but my brother preferred sparring and hunting than speaking to my friends. As for Jon, he was a bastard and everyone treated him as such. Sansa said. Tyrion steadied himself. Lannisters did not groan. They had an alliance with the Reach, and the famine in King's Landing would soon end. Littlefinger's schemes troubled him, but if Cersei controlled her son, they could follow his father's plan and send the Starks north. The Tyrells would control the small council, but the Roses were not dangerous as wolves. Perhaps after the war ended, he could take a tour of the free cities or Dawn. Are you saying that she has no fucking value to your brothers? Bronn asked. She is a steward's daughter, not a lost princess. Tyrion snapped. He grabbed the goblet and drank some much-needed wine. The valuable part is learning of Baelish's scheme, not the girl. My lord, my brothers care about the fate of all the Stark servants. My lady mother and Robb knew the worth of Veon Poole. And Jon, he was always kind. He will not hold the words of many years ago against Jane. Sansa said. The girl may still have value. The Starks think that the entire household was killed by Cersei. The news of a survivor will buy us some goodwill. But we must keep this Jane hidden and find a way to send a secret message to the Northmen. Tyrion said. I knew you were good for something. Bronn said. He handed the dwarf a bottle of Arbor gold. Everything in war took longer than expected. 2 days passed before they had sorted out the castle, searched the towers thoroughly, accounted for stores and supplies, and compiled a full list of Lannister prisoners and the small folk enslaved at the castle. Maester Tothmure and Brewmaster Tufflebury had been helpful, but he didn't trust either man at all. Jon Snow sat in the Great Hall, named the Hall of 100 Hearths by Harren the Black. He counted less than 40 fireplaces, but the room was immense, large enough to hold many thousand men. He had decided against using the solars in the 5 massive towers as an office. For one, those rooms were far from the ground and required a long walk. For another, he despised Harrenhal. The less time spent in the ruined towers, the better. He preferred the small section of the hall, cordoned off by Winterfell guards, where he could hold court with Arya and the direwolves near. "Milord." Jane Heddle curtsied low, and handed an envelope sealed with the Stark direwolf. Robb had sent a raven from the north and addressed it to the inn at the crossroad. The older Heddle sister, eager to see her lover, Elaine, had ridden down in a day. John read the message. Thank you, Lady Heddle. Small John. Tell the men I will address them at dinner. I want all hands in the hall, and every knight and commander. Is it news from the north? Small John asked eagerly. John smiled. Yes, quite good. You will be pleased, but for now, I have many things to do. Before he could leave with Ghost, Darren Hornwood and Sir Raymond Mallory walked over, dragging a villager, perhaps of 1 and 6 name days. Hornwood spoke first. Lord Snow. This fellow was a spy for the brave companions. He joined Sir Raymond and the Septons to report on your actions. Milord, please. They took my sister. They said they would kill her if I didn't report back on you. The boy cried. What happened to the girl? John asked. We found her in a cell underneath Widow's Tower. Dead a long time. Sir Raymond said. John sighed. They are all dead, I suppose. All of the brave companions. Chet nodded. I wish they were alive so I could make them suffer. Release the boy. Wait, how did you send a message to Vargo Hoat? He wanted to know if you would keep your oath. If I knew you was lying, I was to raise my left hand. I thought you would honor the promise, so I raised my right, the boy said. I did keep the promise. My men did not harm him and he left the castle alive. John said. Let the boy go. Harrenhal has seen enough blood for now. John walked the yards alone. Even Ghost stayed away, running with Nymeria. The castle was an abomination. A cruel man built a cruel castle, and the horrors still plagued the Riverlands 300 years later. There were always monsters in this world, and men needed tools to kill them. Aegon Targaryen's weapon was Balerion. But John had no dragons. He walked by the barracks where men drilled and took their meals. Pikesmen tried to charge en masse for a few hundred feet and stop. They had improved and could end the run without skewering each other. He passed the ruined Godswood, with a heart tree that seemed to glare with hatred from its terrible eyes and twisted mouth. He arrived at the smithy, a long building shaped like a tunnel, with 20 forges and water troughs to cool heated metal. He ordered the building sealed so that no one could watch. John started the largest forge, and picked out the tools, bellows, a hammer and tongs. For 4 years, John had studied metallurgy, the secrets of extracting and working metal. The maesters of the citadel claimed they had solved the riddle of steel, using charcoal or limestone to transform iron. The more charcoal, the harder the blade and the sharper the edge. But there was a problem. The harder a blade, the easier it would shatter, not like glass, but it would become notched, chipped and blunted. A sword had to be sharp to deliver the killing blow but flexible enough to absorb force. The metal could not yield when attacking but had to bend on defense. And the blade had to be balanced and the weight evenly distributed. The maesters of smithing believed the answer was pattern welding, forging different layers of steel and iron together to create hardness and toughness. Thin layers of patterned steel were overlaid onto a soft iron core to create metal that could hold an edge but still bend. Skilled bladesmiths treated the steel many times, repeatedly heating, twisting, hammering and folding until impurities were removed and ripples emerged from the layers. John admired the craft but the maester and the smiths were wrong. With time and skill, pattern welding produced a good sword, but not a great one. Valyrian steel required something more. The forge was red hot now. John unwrapped the sheepskin and took out the slender blade. At Riverrun, from a pure ingot of steel, he hammered out the blade, cooled the metal, filed off the sides, and quenched and tempered in hot oil. It would make a fine weapon but he could make better. The secrets of Valyrian steel had been lost in the Doom but there were obvious clues. Valyrian steel handled incredible heat and was dark, nearly black. No folding or pattern welding could achieve those two qualities or match the lightness of the metal. Only magic could do that, the magic of dragons. The legends claimed that Valyrian steel was forged by dragon fire. John believed it was something rarer and more precious, dragon blood. Kill the boy. Let the dragon be born. Those were the words Brynden River whispered in his dreams. John waited until the sword had turned orange-red. Then he took a knife and cut his hand and his arms. The blood dripped down and the blade smoked, the steel melting and burning. He took the hammer and tongs, and even as the drops fell, Jon beat the steel thinner. The fire burned hotter and fiercer, and the blade began to ripple and darken. There were no spells or songs, just his lifeblood bleeding on the steel. The fire was so hot that Jon was surprised it did not sear his wounds shut. He did not burn though, even as the flames shifted from orange to yellow to blue while the blade became dark grey and the whirls flowed like water over the surface. I am the blood of the dragon, and this sword was crafted with my blood. When he finished, Jon held up the blade and examined the ripples where his blood had melted. He set a red stone on the crossguard and attached the pommel of a gold she-wolf. The night, the men assembled in the hall of 100 hearths. Lady Shelowent sat proudly, restored to the great chair at the high table of Harrenhal, but every man, woman and child in the castle knew who held the true power in the castle. Jon Snow stood up and all eyes were on him. My lords, ladies, and knights. We have received news, both good and bad. I will tell you the dark words first. Mace Tyrell has betrothed his daughter Margaery to Joffrey Baratheon. Highgarden is now aligned with the Iron Throne. Jon said. Isn't she married to Renly? Lord Sewin shouted. Not anymore. We must prepare to face the swords of the Reach. Jon said. But the Reach has tens of thousands of men, Lord Snow a Riverlands knight said. Aye, it will not be easy, but the young wolf leads us in battle. And the other message, Robb Stark went north with Flint, Marndale and Umbermen to fight the Ironborn at the neck. He burned their ships, cut off Victorian Greyjoy's head and sunk the Iron Victory. There are 1,000 Ironmen dead on the Fever River. Jon said. Wild cheering filled the room. The next battle would be hard, but for now, the North roared over his brother's success. Jon slipped away. This feast belonged to Lady Went. Arya Stark followed Nymeria to the Godswood. He stood under a sentinel tree, with Ghost prowling around the dark haunted grounds. Jon, I received your message. Her brother smiled, and handed her a sword in a scabbard. My name Day. You did not forget. Of course not. I promised to forge you a true sword. This is yours. Jon said. Arya gasped when she drew the smoky grey blade, so dark it was almost black. The sword was light and slender, with distinctive ripples. She made several cuts and thrusts, marveling at the speed and balance. Is this Valyrian steel? As close as I could make it. Jon mounted on a tree, a heavy steel breastplate. The armor was worn but still strong. The sigil was a black bat on silver and gold. Strike. Arya lunged forward and thrust the sword at the plate. It pierced an entire foot through into the trunk of the sentinel tree, and when she stepped back, the blade came out effortless. A slender hole, an inch wide, could be seen at the point of the thrust. Ciri O'Forel told her that all men were made of water. Had the target been a man, the water would gush out and they would die. She gazed at the sword with wonder. This is a blade to slay monsters, little sister. Not to fight squires or spar in the yard. Jon said. Does it have a name? Arya asked. Gram. The Sword of Heroes. It is the name of a legendary blade from ancient Valyria. What does Gram mean? Arya said. 2 meanings, sister. The first is sorrow. Heroes do not live happy lives. But the second name is better. Wrath. Jon said. Author's notes. Early flak jackets were manganese steel plates sewn into a waistcoat made of ballistic nylon. Arya's jacket is probably lighter than it should be, but it is made in the style of Japanese armor. Lady Ravla Smallwood is one of my favorite minor characters. GRM uses a neat technique in that he focuses primarily on Gendry and Arya in those chapters. We actually have no idea how old Lady Smallwood is besides her having a daughter, probably Sansa's age, that she sent to Old Town for safety. Tywin Lannister may be a terrible parent, but he is a determined foe. I would think after a defeat, he would simply think about how to rebuild. Doesn't mean he won't lose, but he is not a quitter. He would focus on the next step and the many steps after that. I am very curious how the whole Prince Who Was Promised story will come out in the books. My memory is that that idea was a huge deal, to the point where people wondered whether Jon or Daenerys was Azor Ahai. Obviously, Arya jumping into the picture has no support whatsoever. How does bread last a long time? In ancient times, the moisture is taken out of the bread by multiple rounds of baking. The British Royal Navy issued rations of hardtack in the 1500s, but variations were carried by Egyptian sailors and Roman soldiers. Funny enough, I actually think this is what Tolkien meant when he created lembas. Although in Game of Thrones, you would never use such a foofy word to describe hard bread. The pike is a very interesting weapon. Philip of Macedonia, Alexander the Great's father, introduced the sarissa, a much longer two-handed spear, 13 to 20 feet in length. This weapon was a major innovation and helped Alexander crush his enemies. The Roman legion, with its greater tactical flexibility, defeated the Macedonian phalanx at the Battle of Pina. The sarissa was blamed, unfairly, and didn't resurface again until 1,000 years later in the hands of the Swiss. Basically, people took the wrong lesson from the defeat. Pikes were still great, they just needed to be protected by cavalry and attack aggressively with discipline. Pates, Watts and Elmos. This is a joke from one of the Duncan and Egg books where Duncan is training the men at Standfast. Half a dozen of the villagers in the militia are called Wat. Marching music started in the Ottoman Empire in the 16th century. It quickly spread to Europe. You could argue the pikesmen charge without it, but it is a good way to coordinate troops. In ancient war, and even today, coordination is tricky in the heat of battle. Rob against the Ironborn. There were two possibilities for Rob. The first was him going to host a Tully's funeral. I thought about this but decided that would be boring and pointless. All it shows is that Edmure Tully is wimpy. It makes more sense for Rob to strike with surprise. The average speed of a Viking longship was 6 to 10 miles per hour. Under optimal conditions, a warship could travel 20 miles per hour. A longship had symmetrical ends so the Vikings could reverse themselves with ease. I imagine other ships are slower, but I will give the Rivermen and the Mandalis credit for their naval ability. I did a fair bit of research on naval warfare. Hellburners were used in the siege of Antwerp by Dutch rebels in 1585. They packed a chamber full of 7,000 pounds of gunpowder. The explosion killed 800 men in one shot, and could be heard 50 miles away. John will not have gunpowder. As for quicklime, this was used in medieval naval battles. Look up Roger of Loria, a very talented and ruthless commander. Quicklime would react with water, and blind people. People believe that this was an ingredient of Greek fire, and in Westeros, probably wildfire. Victorian Greyjoy is famous for wearing full-plate mail on a ship. I thought his death by drowning and beheading quite fitting. Euron may be the bigger monster, but Victorian is one sick monster. And he is a Moran. Harrenhal was probably based on the castle Pontefract. Pontefract was built on an Anglo-Saxon burial ground, and was an enormous majestic castle that fell into ruin. The castle is roughly in the middle of England, just like Harrenhal, and no family ever held it for long. In fact, King Richard II was allegedly starved to death at the castle, and many nobles either killed or arrested for crimes at the castle. The dungeons were 35 feet deep at Pontefract. I suspect more of my readers come from the TV show than the book. Hote lisps in the book, so that explains the dialogue. Vargo Hote, Gregor Clegane, Roose and Ramsay Bolton are all horrible people, and they deserve to die in the worst possible way. I don't read horror, but the GRM writes a lot of torture porn. As Hote is toast, Jaime is not getting his hand chopped off, for the purpose of redeeming his character. Trial by combat did happen in history and it was a good plot device. However, the logic of it is poor. Tyrion uses it twice, Bronn at the Vale, and Oberyn versus the Mountain. Sandor Clegane kills Beric in his trial. That is supposed to show Beric is fair, but it is a piece of crock. Arya points out that they should not let murderers go free. Pia is missing from the TV show, I believe. In any case, her treatment in the books is awful and egregious. For TV viewers, that is a good thing. She is there to show war crimes and that Jaime is on the path to redemption. Harrenhal really was a terrible place and GRM was prepping for the Gaulish Ramsay Snow. Sword making actually would take a long time, but I had Jon do a lot of it at Riverrun. Pattern welding, by the way, goes out of favor once superior forge technology, the blast furnace, is introduced. People go nuts about Japanese sword making etc., but really they had inferior steel. You only need to fold it many times if the metal is imperfect. Making Arya's sword requires Jon to bleed quite a bit, so this is more of an one-off. Gram is the sword of Sigurd in the saga of the Volsungs. And Gram can kill dragons. Chapter 24, The King Who Never Was. Chapter text. The King Who Never Was. Jon dreamt of the weirwood tree at Harrenhal. Harin the Black, an impious man, built a walled godswood, 20 acres large, 6 times greater than the godswood of the Starks. But the 3 acres of trees at Winterfell had lasted 8,000 years, and Jon took comfort from the brooding beauty of that primal forest. At Harrenhal, the godswood was dark and dank, trees sucking at a small stream and shrinking back in fear from the heart tree, a weirwood with a bone-white face full of hate, a twisted mouth and flaring eyes. 13 deep marks were carved on the bark near the red eyes, and in his dreams, the heart tree bled and screamed. A weirwood could live forever if undisturbed, but should anything live that long, Jon wondered. What horrors had it seen? Did it suffer when Black Harin built his folly on the corpses of thousands of men? Or was it when Egon burned the towers and walls down? He reached out with his hands and the tree shuddered in agony. The weirwood fears you. The speaker was a gaunt thin man with bone-white skin. Brynden Rivers enjoyed his riddles. Why? I have done nothing to it, Jon said. Bloodraven snorted. Time does not matter for a weirwood tree. The children of the forest bound their green seers to the mightiest weirwoods. By doing so, the green seers would live forever, and see the past and the future. But they needed to be wed to the trees to do so. Wed to the trees. Why would anyone choose that? Jon said. Who said they had a choice? Green seers made sacrifices to protect their people, the children of the forest. Bloodraven said. Maester Wolf said the children have been gone for thousands of years, and nothing is left of them but the faces carved in trees. Jon said. Nothing is ever truly gone, Jon Snow. Not the children, or dragons or magic. How could you forge a Valyrian steel blade with your blood? Bloodraven said. I have the blood of the dragon. Jon said. And how can that be, he asked. There were 3 male Targaryens alive at my birth, a Mad King, a 6-year-old boy, and the Prince of Dragonstone. Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna Stark, who I once thought was my aunt. She died in Dorne where I was born. Jon said. You are more than the child of a dragon and a wolf. It is time for you to discover who you are. Go to the Isle of Faces. You will find him there. Bloodraven said. Must you speak in riddles? Who will I find on the Isle of Faces? Jon said. You will find yourself. Bloodraven smirked. Do you wish to save House Stark? To spare your brothers and sisters from torment? Then go. He is waiting. 5 days later, Robb arrived at Harrenhal. Jon had dispatched a force of 500 men to escort his brother from the inn at the crossroads, but he need not have bothered. All of the Riverlands were at peace, from the northern tip of the Trident to Blackwater Rush, from Maidenpool to the mountainous border with the Westerlands. For the first time in almost a year, the 3 main roads of the Riverlands, the River Road, the Gold Road, and the King's Road, were clear from bandits and Lannister men. Inns, keeps and holdfasts offered visitors fire, bread and salt, and all knew about the Northern Victory and the Forest of Dead Men south of Harrenhal. It wasn't much of a forest, Jon thought. True, it stretched 4 miles in every direction, but only because the first man who paced must have been a giant. Jon had ordered a sellsword hung every 50 paces, but there were less than 20 a mile. Either his men counted poorly or they had leaped in every step. 250 bodies hung from trees and makeshift gallows, and most were brave companions. Jon executed only 24 Lannister men, and a smattering of bandits too stupid or brutal to change their ways. In the last few days, a steady rain had fallen from Harroway to Stony September. Septons declared that it was the Father blessing the fields with a bountiful harvest. Bards and minstrels sang that the mother and the maiden cried for the sufferings of the Riverlands. The small folk whispered that the bloody wolf had conjured the storms from the highest tower at Harrenhal with ritual sacrifice. Jon thought the explanation silly. The weather was the weather. And if the rain fed grass, fields and rivers, small folk could till their lands and fishermen catch a greater bounty. The rain lashing down in heavy waves thoroughly ruined the effect of the forest of dead bodies. Soggy men, even broken corpses, did not frighten anyone. 1,500 prisoners were captured at the Trident and 40 more at Harrenhal. Those who were not highborn would be released back west either to the Golden Tooth or Deep Den. The captives had sworn oaths that they would never attack the north or the Riverlands, but the wagons could carry only a few hundred at a time. Highborn knights and lords would be held at Riverrun, although John allowed Sir Harrock and any other crippled men to return home. Life at Harrenhal settled into a simple pattern. The granaries stocked food and stores to prepare for future campaigns. Bands of scouts travelled the King's Road, reporting no Lannisters as far south as Southhorn. Men trained in Flowstone Yard, although the pikesmen were unable to execute anything other than the most basic maneuvers. Arya won victories beating up other squires and carried only Needle and not Graham. Robb Stark was greeted with a joyous uproar on his return. The Northmen carried back trophies of their victory, silver belt buckles, bracelets, rings and ivory drinking horns. The Marndale brothers displayed the torn sail of the Golden Kraken which they planned to hang at half-mast at White Harbour. Robb had been generous with the spoils taken from the Lord Captain of the Iron Flint. Robin Flint, the Marndales, and the Great Jon divided the full plate, the cloak of gold cloth, the war-axe, and long sword. Robb kept the great helm, and 2 dumb brutish eyes frozen in death could seen behind the Kraken's face. After the wild boasting and loud hurrahs subsided, Robb repaired to the Castellan's chambers to speak with Jon. He and Grey Wind paced back and forth. Robb waited until Oliver Free had made certain that no one could hear. "I meant to return earlier but I was delayed at the inn at the crossroads. The rivermen came to speak with me," Robb said. Jon raised his eyebrows. "Aren't they at Riverrun?" Lord Mouton and Lord Dare returned to their lands, but the other houses attended Hoster Tully's funeral. The Riverlords remain at Riverrun. They have to pledge loyalty to Ed Muir, as the new Lord Tully. But their sons and heirs came to the inn at the crossroads," Robb said. "Which ones?" Jon asked. "Almost all of them. Mark Piper, Hugo Vance, Patrick Mallister, Bryndon and Lucas Blackwood, Hendry Bracken, and half a dozen others. They wish me to be King of the Trident," Robb said. Jon burst out laughing. Discord in an army was never positive but the situation was amusing. "What is so funny?" Robb asked. "Robb, everyone else is playing this Game of Thrones and fighting to be king, Renly, Stannis, Joffrey. They say that Balon Greyjoy crowned himself king of the Iron Islands. You on the other hand have fallen ass backward into 2 offers of kingship," Jon said. Robb's expression shifted from annoyance to laughter. The 2 brothers chuckled before Robb, still smiling, continued. "Jon, what do you think? They don't trust Ed Muir to defend the Riverlands. They think him unable to match Tywin Lannister. The Rivermen were right, but that was not Jon's concern. Robb, when we were children, I swore to stand by your side in battle. Do you want the Iron Throne? If you do, then I will fight with you. But tell me your thoughts first before I give my opinion." "I do not want a throne, Jon. I saw Robert Baratheon at Winterfell. Father always said he was the greatest warrior of the land and a giant among lords. But after he became king, he was just a fat drunk. I want the Riverlands to be at peace. I want Sansa back home. But I do not want to sit on a chair made of swords." "Who would?" Robb said. "You would rule with honor and justice. But becoming king has nothing to do with such things. The Riverlands are 1,000 miles away from Winterfell, but that is not the real problem. The greater issue is the borders. The Riverlands shares borders with 6 of the 7 kingdoms, the North, the Westerlands, the Vale, the Iron Islands, the Reach and the Stormlands. Anyone who holds the Riverlands must have support from other regions. Otherwise, you would be like the Storm King fighting with House Hoare over the Trident," Jon said. "But I do not want the Rivermen to suffer," Robb said. "What did you think of the Tyrells and the men of the Reach?" Jon said. "They have many knights and their army is far larger than ours. The men boast about their fighting skills but so do our bannermen. Mace and Loras Tyrell are idiots but Willers, Sir Garland and Margaery are no fools. And neither is Lady Olenna. She took the raven you sent from Golden Tooth. If she were a man, she would rule the Reach," Robb said. "The Tyrells have no reason to want more bloodshed in the Riverlands. If you demand peace for House Tully and their bannermen, they may agree. The Tyrells want to rule over the 7 kingdoms, not fight endless wars. Jon said. There is another matter, Jon. Robb hesitated. When I was fighting at the Neck, I missed the Lady Talisa. I wish to court her, and to ask for her hand in marriage. And does the lady feel the same? Or will your words chase her back to the Reach? Jon jested. Watch it, Snow. I have been told that as Lord of Winterfell, I am a great prize in marriage. Robb feigned a pompous tone. By who? The Great Jon. Jon said. They laughed again. Robb, I am glad for you, but I would wait a moon. I do not think the bannermen will be angered, but it would be best to wait until the war in the Riverlands is over. We do not know if we will need allies in marriage. Talisa is kind and bright, but she brings no swords or spears. She is from a noble family in Volantis. Robb said. That means her family is 2,000 miles away. Volantis is known for their wealth, trade and slaves, but not their skills at arms. Jon said. You are right, Jon. My mother says that I cannot marry for love. But the heart wants what the heart wants. Robb said. Lady Catelyn is right in war, Robb. If the North must fight, your duty is to your men and to defend your small folk and lands. But in peace, you can marry Talisa. Jon said. I wish we could find more swords. I have heard nothing from Sir Robert. Nor from Lord Bolton. If Bolton joins Lord Tywin's army, and more recruits come from the Crown lands, the Lannister force would be greater than 15,000 again. Robb lamented. I have an idea. Jon said. More of your pikesmen. How goes their training? Robb said. Not well. It will take many moons to shape them into a fighting force. I tried to teach them to turn right. After the order, half the men faced right. Half went left. We were lucky that their pikes were pointed at the sky, else it would have been bloodier than the Red Fork. Jon said. The brothers laughed for the 3rd time. Grey Wind and Ghost shook their heads, wondering why their masters were so silly. The little cousins of the wolf pack would follow their orders. There is a way to get spears, but only after several moons. Still it is worth pursuing. Jon said. He told his brother more. The 2 brothers walked down to Flowstone Yard, near the Wailing Tower. Men, boys, and Arya drilled for war in the giant yard. Harrenhal was so immense that many quintins were set up near the stables for squires to practice charging with a shield and lance. The central quintin had a small metal ring and the best riders tilted at the rings. A flat field was set aside for lines of archers to shoot at 5 butts, circular mounds placed 150 yards away. The targets were 5 crudely colored rings, and men cheered when the arrows hit the center yellow band. Pikemen trained outside the castle, given the loud drumming, and the need for more space. Nymeria perked up at the sight of her brothers. The she-wolf was forbidden to help her skinny little girl in fighting other children with silver claws. Not that her aid was needed. Arya had easily beaten a boy with a black pitchfork and another wearing 2 porcupines. Nymeria wondered why anyone would choose a sigil other than a dire wolf. Jon cleared his throat. Arya, alert as ever, shifted sideways on the balls of her foot. She turned, sword in her hand, ready to pounce when she saw Jon and Robb. She smiled, and gave an impish bow. Jon, do you have any duties for your squire? Arya said. Actually, sister. We need him. Jon pointed to the boy that Arya had been fighting. Edric Dane nervously placed his blunted blade on the ground. They retired to the hall of 100 hearths. Sir Beric and Thoros of Myr sat with Edric, facing the Starks. Guards had dragged a small porcine man in chains there on Jon's orders, and the Wintertown boys stood ready. Lord Stark. House Lannister will ransom me. The old lion looks upon my house with great favor. Amory Lorque simpered in a high, thin voice. Your brother, Sir Laurent, said the same before I ordered him dragged to his death. Although I believed he threatened me first with Lord Tywin's revenge. Chet, was that before or after he called me a bastard? Jon said. Laurent called you a bastard before and after the threat. He also swore that he would escape and take your head. And that his brother, Sir Amory, would kill you a dozen times. Chet said. The piggy Amory blanched with fear. We're not going to kill you, Lork. John smiled. Edric Dane, you have pledged your service to me. I wish you to deliver Amory Lork to Sunspear and House Martell. I am sure Prince Doran and his brother will have questions for him. Edric looked to Beric Dondarrion for guidance. This is justice, lad. Lork is no true knight. He took part in the murder of the royal family at King's Landing. Beric said. I only followed orders. Lork blubbered. The mountain killed the baby and his mother. Yes, and you stabbed a 3-year-old girl to death. Rob said with disgust. Whose orders? John said. Who directed you to kill the children? Lork looked around wild-eyed, hoping for any glimmer of a reprieve or mercy. He found none. Who directed you? John asked again. Lord Tywine. He ordered Elia Martell and her children slain, and their bodies presented to Robert Baratheon. Lork said. John nodded. Edric, tomorrow, you will go to Maidenpool. You cannot sail directly to Dorne. You should go to Gulltown, and take a ship to Pentos. From there, find a ship going to Sunspear. You will need an armed escort, at least half a dozen men. Do you wish to return to Dorne, Lord Dondarrion? Rob asked. Lord Stark, I barely remember my castle in the marches, or the eyes of my betrothed. She was beautiful but I cannot recall her face. My place is with the White Wolf. Beric said. Sir Imon Cui may serve. Better he go to Dorne than fight against his friends in the Reach. The Foresters could escort them with other loyal Northmen. John said. My lords, I am happy to serve, but what message should I bring to Prince Doran? Edric said. Rob thought for a moment. Tell the Martells that House Stark an alliance with Dorne. Amory Lork is a gift captured by my brother. We have beaten the Lannisters in many battles, but Dornish swords and spears would help us defeat them for good. John, what would you add? When you arrive at Sunspear, announce to the city that the North have sent Rhaenys's killer to Dorne. Ask the Martells if they want to avenge their sister and her children. John said. John finished the letter to Mage Mormont. He missed dinner again, but also avoided Lady Stark and the Rivermen. Many Southron knights and lords expressed shock at the treatment of the brave companions. He had given the bloody mummers an easier death than they deserved, John thought. His only regret was that the justice was not complete. The little thieves were hanged, but the great ones escaped. Ghost heard the rustle at the door first, but the direwolf bounded over and gave the entrant a great big lick. John chuckled at Arya's cry of surprise. Sister, you cannot sneak up on a direwolf. Their senses are far better than ours. Droth, Ghost. Arya said. Nymeria had snuck into the room and took a large bite of Ghost's roast chicken. You weren't at dinner. I am trying to get more swords for Rob. Most of the prisoners from the Battle of Oxcross and capture of the Tooth have been released. There are only 50 captives left at the castle, and most are highborn ladies. We still need a garrison at the Golden Tooth to secure that pass, and demand supplies, but Lady Mage can send the bulk of her forces to Harrenhal. John said. Do you think the Dornish will send us men? Arya said. John shook his head. Not any time soon. Edric should arrive in Gulltown in less than a week. But it is a much longer trip to Pentos. He has to sail to Essos to avoid the waters from Dragonstone to Storm's End. It is 1,000 miles from Pentos to Sunspear. If the winds are good, and the ships make no other stops, the whole trip will still take a full moon's time. And for Dorne to raise an army, and find enough ships to bring them to Maidenpool, that would take much longer. But why did you send Edric off then? Arya said. 1. Edric deserves better than to be a dead man's squire. And 2. Rhaenys Targaryen is beloved still in Dorne. It is justice that Elia Martell's brothers punish Lork for his crimes. At dinner, my lady mother sat me next to Edric Dane and Leman Diari. Edric asked her if he could write to me from Dorne. Arya said. Did Lord Diari and Lord Dane fight a duel for your hand? And should I call you the Lady of Starfall now? John jested. His sister stuck out her tongue. I do not want to be betrothed. Arya said. You have only 12 name days. Jon said. Sansa was betrothed at 13. Arya said grimly. I want to be free to make my own way. To see the world. Jon thought his little sister was much like Alyssa Farman, who built the Sunchaser to sail west of Westeros. You may like Dawn, sister. Women are treated as the equal of men. Girls can be warriors and can inherit titles as well. Jon said. I should not have to go south for that. That should be true everywhere, not just Dawn. Arya said. We could travel around Westeros and be hedge knights, like Dunk and Egg. Jon smiled. That sounds nice until you run out of coin and have nowhere to sleep but a hedge and nothing to eat but hard salt beef. And I am not the size of Sir Duncan. Will you take me to see the citadel, Jon? Arya asked. I do not know if I will be welcomed back. Many acolytes belong to the families of the Reach. If we battle the Tyrells, then I will fight and kill their brothers and cousins. Even if we do not, I will be in danger at the citadel. I have no doubt the Lannisters will try to kill me there. Jon said. What? Arya and Nymeria reacted with shock. The Lannisters have the coin to hire assassins. At the citadel, I will have no army to protect me. And if I die, Robb will never find the killers. Old Town is very far away. Jon said. I won't let you die. I will kill Lord Tywine. Arya said. You won't be my squire, forever. Jon chuckled. And it won't just be Lord Tywine. There are many Lannisters, and his grandchildren on the Iron Throne. Even if Joffrey dies, it won't end. What will you do, Jon? Arya said. Survive, Arya. I will beat them all. Day at a time, I suppose. Tyrion Lannister stood at the river gate, looking over the southeast wall and the wharves of Blackwater Rush. Sir Jacelyn Bywater commanded a full battalion of mounted gold cloaks, and bronze thugs attended, as well as unwashed savages from the Vale. Even the fetid odors of the docks could not mask the stench of the burned men and the stone crows. Tyrion would have moved upwind, but then he could not see the approaching banners. Pod. Describe the arms you see and tell me which houses they represent. Podrick Payne lowered the great banner that he struggled to carry, a black-crowned stag and a gold lion on a gold and crimson field. The two mighty beasts faced off, hooves and paws ready to strike each other. A golden rose on a green field. House Tyrell. A yellow tree on a silver field. House Rowan. A white tower crowned in flames on smoke grey. House Hightower. A red archer shooting an arrow on a green field. House Tarly. A red apple. Oh, for fuck's sake. Who cares what the damn banners say? Bronn said. How many swords did the Reach bring to King's Landing? Tyrion sniffed. Someday, knowledge of heraldry may save Podrick's life. Bronn shook his head and rolled his eyes. Tyrion looked over the vast host, 1,000 lances, 5 times as many spears, with Tarly archers, and a dozen other houses with spears and pikes, maces and hammers. The ring of iron and steel stretched as far as the eye can see. Nearly 10,000 men. And the bulk of their fighting force marches north of Tumbleton to the Riverlands. The Tyrells had sent an enormous show of force to King's Landing. Did they mean to encamp so many men at the capital? Suddenly, Tyrion realized exactly why his lord father needed more men. Gold cloaks, the mountain clans and sellswords did not match this 1/4 of the Reach army. Tyrion gritted his teeth and rode forward on his palfrey, with Bronn and Pod following. He put on an amiable smile to hide his mounting concern. He rode to the elegant wheelhouse, decorated with golden flowers. A tall bearded knight with the curly brown hair and large brown eyes of the Tyrells opened the door. A slender pretty girl stepped out, clad in green and gold. She helped an wizened woman with sharp and shrewish eyes stand. Behind the wheelhouse, 6 great lords rode, escorted by a guard of many knights. Well met, my lords. His Grace, King Joffrey, bids you welcome and hopes you find. Tyrion began. Where is the king? And where is your sister, the queen? Why did they not come to meet us? Lady Olenna said sharply. You must forgive my grandmother. We have come a long way in a short time, and rest and refreshment are much needed. We had hoped the king would welcome us to the city, and the queen would guide us to the Red Keep, the girl said sweetly. As hand of the king, I speak for his grace. Sir Jacelyn Bywater, Lord Commander of the City Watch, will direct the gold cloaks to see to your men's lodging. Rooms have been prepared in the Red Keep for your party. Tyrion said. I am to be the king's hand. A large man in green and gold armor on a struggling white charger said. Mace Tyrell was a bit over 40 name says, but his fat and grey beard made him seem as old as Lord Tywine. I would be happy for you attend small council meetings now, Lord Tyrell. Once the troubles in the Riverlands are over, I will give up my office and the Tower of the Hand. Tyrion said. Mace Tyrell was mollified. His mother was not. We demand the empty small council seats now. Mathis Rowan will be Master of Laws. John Fossoway will be Master of Ships until Paxter Redwine can sail from the Arbor. Where are the other small council members? Lord Baelish and Grand Maester Pycelle are not here to greet us. That was a surprise. Littlefinger had brokered the arrangement, and the Master of Coin should have attended, if only to renew his acquaintance. Pycelle was his sister's man. And Varys was no doubt here, disguised as a dock worker or a begging brother. I would happily call a small council meeting later today. So Lord Tyrell and your other bannermen may learn about the state of the capital. And discuss the end of the famine that you created, Tyrion thought. Then the bells began to ring. The old King Jaehaerys the Wise commissioned 23 cast bronze bells from Essos and placed them in the 3-level belfry in the Red Keep. They were not as large and imposing as the 3 bells of Norphos, but the sound could be heard throughout the city. Are we under attack? Sir Garland cried. The bells rang 16 years before to surrender the city during the sack, but most often, bells tolled to warn citizens of battle and to direct small folk and ladies to stay in shelter. Tyrion had men watching the King's Road. The Tyrell army was the only one 4 miles. Stannis was sailing from Storm's End, but he did not have enough men. I do not know. Tyrion admitted. Lady Olenna looked at him in disbelief. A fierce bald man with a bristling grey beard began to shout orders, and Sir Garland took charge of the lances. Lord Fossoway, Hightower, Ashford, and Rowan galloped back to their men. War horns sounded and the Tyrell army unfolded like an iron rose with steel thorns. Shouldn't we find out why the bells are being rung? Bronn asked. The bells are near the Great Hall. I will lead the way. Tyrion said, trying to take charge. Lord Hand, the Blackwater. The river is on fire. Bywater yelled. On the opposite side of King's Landing, green flames could be seen. Tyrion groaned when he saw the color. The room next to the Iron Throne faced east on Blackwater Bay, overlooking thick stone parapets on the ramparts of the curtain walls of the Red Keep. Men rushed about the nests of catapults, launching small projectiles that exploded in the water below. A dozen ships were lit up in dark, emerald and jade flames, an almost pretty sight if not for the corpses in the water and the smell of burnt flesh. Tyrion found King Joffrey guarded by 3 white cloaks with Cersei, Baelish and Pycelle in the room. An old white-bearded man in leather robes with the thick metal chain of a pyromancer yelled orders at the soldier below. What is going on here? Tyrion asked. Bronn and Pod were by his side and the Tyrell family followed, with many lords from the Reach. Baelish smirked and bowed slightly to Lady Margaery. His Grace saw enemy ships on the horizon. I informed him of your visit to the alchemists. He was eager to defend the city and summoned his loyal guildsmen. But Varys says that Stannis's fleet was seen a day ago, at Mass's Hook, sailing for Dragonstone. It would take them a week to approach King's Landing. Tyrion peered more closely down at the harbour. One ship with striped sails and a bank of oars might have been large enough to be a war galley or a troop transport. These aren't ships from Storm's End or Dragonstone. You have burned merchants' cogs and fishing boats. His Grace cannot make an error. He has defended the city from an attack by the usurpers, sell-sails and pirates. Baelish said. The other Tyrells stood in the corner, their eyes taking in the strange sight of wildfire shimmering on the Blackwater Bay. The Lord of Highgarden pushed forward. Your Grace, we are your loyal and true servants. Mace simpered. Tyrion's head throbbed. 2 Senites ago, Renly Baratheon was alive, and the Tyrells were in open revolt. He interrupted the introductions between his nephew and the Tyrells. How many jars are down there? The wildfire cannot be exposed to heat or the sun. Hawlin told me the jars must be transported at night in carts filled with sand or sealed with wax. I have ordered 10,000 more jars from the guild. I will roast the wolves alive. Joffrey shouted with glee. The Reach Lords glanced at each other with concern. Your Grace, wildfire is treacherous. A fickle wind or a hit by a catapult stone, and it may be our troops that burn. Garland said. Hawlin, you must bring the jars back inside. If they go on fire, there is not enough sand in King's Landing to put out the flames. Tyrion said. The pyromancer began to babble on about experiments, duration, and how the substance flowed when Joffrey angrily interrupted. You don't get to decide, dwarf. I am the king. I am going to show the Starks and the usurper what it means to cross me, he said. We only need to use wildfire if Stannis attacks with a large fleet. We do not need to set the Blackwater aflame to defend against 1 galley and a dozen fishermen. And by using wildfire today, our enemies will know about it. Tyrion said. What does it matter if they know? Let them fear me more. Joffrey said. At that moment, a soldier outside dropped one of fat clay jars. The pebbled grey pot fell and hit the base of the wooden catapult. The green liquid leaked out, splashing the man and the stones nearby. For a moment, Tyrion thought the danger had passed. Then the second jar that soldier was carrying caught on fire and exploded, the liquid substance spraying high into the sky, and the flames shot high into the sky, a fiery green geyser that could be seen for miles. On the ramparts below, the screaming soldier ran back into the castle, and ignited catapult after catapult with their jars of wildfire. The nests, the crenels, the melons, all of it glowed green as men tried desperately to escape to corner forts or crevices the flames had not yet reached. Heat made wildfire expand, and more clay jars hissed as the faint pop-pop of lids could be heard despite the howls of the dying. The soldiers were all dead, Tyrion thought. Wildfire could burn for hours. Even if the catapult crews were not burnt alive, the heat on the parapet would be unbearable. They would be baked in a stone oven, if the walls did not crack and fall. Do something. Joffrey yelled at the pyromancer. Hawlin nodded obsequiously and then gathered his disciples. Tyrion saw the shock and disgust on the faces of the Reachmen. Lady Margaery though only looked worried, and Baelish remained impassive. Cersei soothed her sulking son. For now, none of this mattered. No one could do anything but let the wildfire burn. In the corner of the room, he saw Varys, the green flames reflected in the eunuch's cat-like eyes. A few hours later, Tyrion poured a cup of wine for the spider in the solar of the Tower of the Hand. The flames still burned, and stories of the wildfire incident spread through King's Landing. The actual flames were confined to Blazewater Bay and the ruined Curtain Wall. How did Littlefinger find out about the wildfire? Tyrion said. 10,000 jars cost a great deal of dragons. An expenditure of that size cannot be hidden from the Master of Coin. Varys said. My lord, I would be more worried about the message Baelish sent to the Tyrells. What message was that? He did not even greet the Tyrells at the gate. Tyrion said. Exactly. You were sent to meet the wheelhouse. Lord Baelish was with the king, whispering into his ear. Do you remember the riddle I told you that day at the inn? Varys said. A king, a priest and a rich man. Each bids the swordsman to slay the other two. You said power resides where men believe it resides, a shadow on the wall. And that even a small man could cast a large shadow. Tyrion said. Why do men think the hand of the king is powerful? Because he speaks for the king. Tyrion responded. And do you speak for the king? The king is a dunce who set an entire wall of the Red Keep on fire to burn down a few boats. Tyrion said. But without him, your shadow diminishes. You were feared because you had the mountain men, your father's order, and the office of the hand. Now, there are many more gold cloaks and even more Tyrell swords in King's Landing. Your father was beaten in battle, and his army much reduced. And soon, you will not be hand. Joffrey will reward Baelish for this alliance while Lannister influence weakens. Varys said. Anyone who considers my lord father weak is a fool. The Lord of Casterly Rock is not to be underestimated. Tyrion said. But his power has slipped, and Joffrey is no longer so pliable. You know about Aegon the Unhappy. He was named king when he had 11 name days. He was bullied by his regents. On his 16th name day, Aegon dismissed them all. Joffrey has 14 name days. And as he nears his age of majority, his shadow will grow. In 2 years, my shit of a nephew will be Mace Tyrell's problem. Once the negotiations with the Starks are over, Joffrey will be wedded and bedded. I will be touring the free cities, as far away from King's Landing as possible. Tyrion said. He drank the full goblet of wine and ignored the wry smile on the spider's face. Arya Stark glared at the scrum of highborn lords meeting the emissaries from the Iron Throne. Tyrell guards and gold cloaks remained outside in the courtyard, but the 4 men from King's Landing were followed by a retinue of squires and servants. Her brother Robb looked on as Lady Went offered the customary plate of bread and salt. In the Hall of 100 Hearths, her mother, the Rivermen, and even the Northmen treated Joffrey's minions with far more respect than they deserved. The cruelties of the last year had been forgotten. Arya, there's no need to scull. Jon said. Her other brother had no titles or land, so he stayed with her while high-ranking lords and nobles greeted each other. They are our enemies, Jon. They are probably here to spy on us. Arya said. Nymeria growled, her grey and white fur bristling. Perhaps, but with the Tyrells joining the Lannisters, we need to negotiate with the Iron Throne. Jon pointed out the Reachman, a tall broad brown-haired man and an older balding man with a short grey beard. That is Sir Garland Tyrell, the second son. He came to the tourney at Riverrun. And the man is Randil Tarly. He is said to be their best battle commander. I do not know much about Tarly, but Sir Garland was friendly with Robb. The red-headed man is glaring at you. Arya said. Sir Adam Marbrand. He has every right to glare. I cut off his nephew's hand, and captured his good sister and brother at Golden Tooth. His father is a good man, and withdrew Ashmark from the war. Silverhill and Deepden followed after. Jon said. Adam and Petter Baelish represent the crown. And Garland and Lord Tyrell speak for the Reach. Why isn't Tywin Lannister here? Arya asked. Jon thought for a moment. The last time talks failed, he sent his son Tyrion. He may mean to do the same, to see what we propose and then decide. Of course, there are other possibilities. House Lannister is weaker now, and Tywin may have to give way to the Tyrells. Or, Lord Tywin means to ignore whatever agreement the Iron Throne makes. By not attending, he does not bind House Lannister. I served as his cupbearer here, at Harrenhal. Jon, Tywin Lannister doesn't want to just kill you. He will try to destroy the Starks. He cares only about his house. Arya said. Did he mistreat you? Jon said. Arya bit her lip. He was not cruel, which makes it even worse. He will use monsters to kill and torture and claim his hands are clean. He did not treat me poorly, but he would have given me to the mountain if it would win him the war. He won't stop, Jon. If he means to kill you, why would he spare Robb or Sansa? Or even Bran and Rickon? He will kill them too. Her brother did not anger easily, but when he did, it was a terrible quiet rage. Jon stared at Lord Baelish, smirking and smiling as he greeted Lady Catelyn and Lord Ed Muir. Ghost's red eyes gleamed in the shadows and the direwolf stepped forward, only to be held back by his master's hand. You are right, Arya. We have been too complacent. We need to prepare for war. Petter Baelish and Garland Tyrell faced Robb Stark and Jon Snow across the table. There were other lords and ladies in the great room, including her mother and Lady Went, but Arya was certain that her brothers would handle the negotiations. Her uncle Ed Muir might be the new Lord of Riverrun, but victory in battle, not titles, had brought the Iron Throne to the table. The Blackfish hovered nearby with Tully guards and the Northmen huddled behind Robb. I am certain we can come to an agreement. All of us here want peace. But it must be an honorable one. One where the interests of the Iron Throne are respected. Baelish prattled. The Iron Throne can go to hell. I want my sister, Sansa. Robb said. House Lannister will accept a trade of Sansa Stark for Sir Jaime Lannister. Adam Marbrand said. We have no problems with that. Garland Tyrell chimed in. Petter Baelish frowned and looked apologetic. I am not certain it will be that simple. Your sister has not been seen in King's Landing for some time. What has happened to Sansa? Caitlin said. The Hand took her 2 weeks ago. She has kept under guard by his sellswords and savages, and no one has seen her since. Who knows what plans the dwarf has for her? Baelish said. What are you saying, Lord Baelish? Has Sansa been harmed? Robb demanded. Lord Stark. Lady Sansa was taken to the Tower of the Hand.